Good evening and welcome to the Gin and Tonic show on Friday, the 17th of March 2017. I am pasting the link to join the discussion into the chat box, and hopefully you will be able to see that and you can join in the chat. We're going to wait for my co-host now, Abu, to join us. He's got some interesting things to chat about with regards to the Andalusian paradise, or the so-called Andalusian paradise. So we'll wait a moment or two just for my colleague to come in. And in the meantime, I thought I'd just mention, which probably if you do follow Islam and some of the topical events, you would have probably seen the news item recently where there was a young girl who was recorded on a mobile phone twerking or dancing, and she got a lot of hate and abuse, etc. And my friend, in inverted commas, Ali Dawa, decided to do a video and to speak to her live. And of course, that went out on YouTube and has been picked up by a number of newspapers. So if Ali Dawa wanted to be, quote, a celebrity, I think he's managed to do so now. And I think he's been roundly criticized for what he's done. There we go. There's my colleague. Good evening, Abu. How are you, sir?
Good evening, sir. I'm fine.
Good.
Yes.
I was just mentioning, I don't know if you saw that article with that young lady here in Birmingham, I think it was. That's one of the towns here in the UK. That was, recorded on a mobile phone.
I've been so busy the last 2 weeks, but I heard a little bit about that. I don't know so much.
Yeah, she was just recorded sort of dancing in the street in like an area where the public walks past, in a shopping mall area, and that went viral, and she got a lot of hate. She got a few death threats, and then Ali Dawa managed to get hold of her somehow and speak to her, which he recorded the conversation and put it on his website, basically tell her how bad it was, what was going on. And of course, he's got over 100,000 views, and then subsequently said he will try and stop anybody else, making it go viral. But once you have 100,000 subscribers and you post that video, that kind of makes it go viral even more. Not that he's got any qualifications for, that sort of thing, but decided that he would add his view to what happened there.
He had this kind of moralistic view that twerking is very bad.
Yeah, is it haram? Is that the correct term?
Yeah, that's the correct term. It's haram. That's not good behavior.
If twerking is bad behavior, how comes you got all these Arab women during weddings on their fours with their bums in the air twerking?
I don't know, where's that?
I mean, if it's twerking, wait a minute.
I was asked where it was.
I'm going to give a
Google YouTube Arab weddings, you'll see it.
Okay, so if I'm gonna go do a fatwa, I'm not sure twerking is like if she twerks in front of her husband, that may not be haram. Although I'm not 100% sure. Depends on. But it's definitely haram if you do it in public. That.
Well, it's in public because these men go. It's also done in I suppose they're dancing halls, because the men go up to them according to what looks like a tradition, and then places money, paper money, on their buttocks while they're doing it.
That's. I mean,
it looks like a cultural dance.
Yeah.
And the only difference between twerking and this is the fact that the women are all in burqas, wearing their black, with their bums in the air and on all fours, whereas twerking is usually a dance move where the woman is standing just on her two legs.
Yeah, no, but not all of what Arabs do is from Islam. Arabs do a lot of things.
I guess if you're covered with a burqa, then obviously you're not going to be identified. So you, in some senses, you're a lot safer like that.
Well, the only thing I could say about the case of the twerker, she was in Birmingham, and Birmingham has been identified as the more Islamist than London. There are more people who are radicalised and went to join ISIS living in Birmingham than there is in London.
Yes, I've heard that. I've heard that.
So it was. I'm not surprised they went absolutely batshit over her, because they're a very fundamentalist group, a community, very insular, very Wahhabi or Salafist.
Yeah, that's right. And my concern is always, it's not with the quote moderate Muslims, which I know a few personally, and you wouldn't know they were Muslim other than they tell you, because they don't pray 5 times a day, so they don't. The moderate ones tend to follow the Quran less and the Hadith less strictly. Consequently, they obviously, don't appear to be, as Muslim as some other Muslims. But it's the radicals. It's those that follow the Quran closely that appear to have, the most. They shout the loudest, and they seem to believe they've got the most justification. So
yeah, they have the most justifications from the Quran and the Sunnah. I think it's quite clear.
Anyway, that was just a by the by. Our show today, the Andalusian Paradise, that were keen to chat about. I've done a little bit on it as well. I've read up a document, which I will post a link to in the chat as well. But no doubt you've prepared some things. Do you want to take over the screen and do it that way, or?
Yeah, no, we can start. How should we? Like, what I've done is that I read the book.
Which book did you read?
The Myth of the Andalusian Paradise.
Oh, is that the one by?
It's called Fernando or something.
Mario Fernandez Moria.
Yeah,
that's the same one that there's a shorter PDF of it. And I read that.
Yeah, and and then I also listened to like the lecture series with a Muslim Muslim sheikh / historian that goes through all this. And also I watched this documentary with when the Moors ruled Europe.
Yes,
it's this. What's she called? There's a BBC historian.
Do you have anything on what Spain was like before the Muslims came?
Oh, good that you reminded me. Now I remember what I was supposed to do. Okay, but I have to start up some Windowses. Can you start while I'm doing that? Can you what do you know about this, and what do you want to know?
I could say that Spain has a long history with Rome. Octavius was doing his campaigns during his early adult years in Spain before being called back to fight the big civil war that they ended up having. Spain was not, shall we say, uncultured. It had its dominant tribes. It became later under Roman rule after a negotiated kind of peace. It was regarded during the Roman times as being a wealthy province, famed for all sorts of wealth. You had a lot of the aristocracy going to Spain and to France to have their estates. So we're not looking at poor provinces. We're looking at some places which had a lot of Roman influences and had a lot of feedback to Rome. I think there were a few Roman emperors who came from Spain in the latter part of the empire.
Sorry, Abu or GP, one of you is breathing into the mic. So if you have a mic that's very close to your mouth, maybe move it to the side of your mouth, or just move a little bit further back, because we can hear you breathing into the mic every time you take a breath, or breathing out, should I say.
Let me breathe. Was that me?
No, so it might be Abu. Abu, if you've got a mic there, just move it a little bit.
It's possible. I'm sitting
I can just hear. It's almost like I can hear every breath that you breathe out.
Sorry.
So for me, the most important point would be that Spain was not a country looking for outside help, even at the collapse of the Roman Empire. The people who occupied Spain at the end of the Roman Empire were the very people who toppled the city of Rome. They were the guys who came from north to Rome, pleaded for help because they were being pushed out of their empire, Rome gave them permission to stay, but then they double-crossed them, so they just sacked Rome and then moved to Spain. I got that from one of the Total War games.
Yeah, I'm gonna talk about that a little bit. I'm just trying to find a good map here.
The only other thing I know about Spain is indirectly to Spain is that the Mediterranean coastline, if Spain was an economic powerhouse as far as having lots of things to trade, like horses and whatever, they could only get it to Rome by land or by sea. Now, we know that when Islam became adopted by most of the coastline, the amount of pirate ships were phenomenal, and the wreckages that the archaeologists are finding along the coastline of the former European Roman side of the Mediterranean is quite a lot of them. So the evidence points that Muslim ships were sinking all the trade routes. They were plundering left, right, and centre, judging by the wreckages. So Spain would have been in some kind of economic duress from a lack of trade.
What years were this? Have you got any idea of the time frame?
No, they just point. The wrecks are just in that general area. They don't date them that precisely, do they? So it would be within 100 years of Muslims taking over the coastline of Africa.
Okay, maybe now I can start to.
So you're looking about the 8th century upwards.
Yeah, because now you're touching upon that. I'm trying to find the right window.
What are you trying to do there? Oh, to share your screen.
Share your screen there. So, okay, so now here is like a map of Europe. So like before the conquest, before that was in 711 to 715 Christian time. So I don't know. Can you see what I'm pointing here?
Yeah, it's moving a lot though. So just move your cursor slower because it's bouncing around. And now we've lost you again. We don't have a picture.
You don't have a picture?
There we go. Now we've got it. Okay, so when I speak, you've got it. I'm going to mute myself and then you carry on.
Okay, I have to.
As soon as I speak, it comes over.
You just double click on his icon and it stays.
Yeah. I double clicked on my own icon. Okay, so the guys that ruled Spain before the Muslims came was the guys called the Visigoths, and they, if I just read, the Visigoths, Visigoth, Vesi, or Visi, Italian Visigothi, were the western branch of the nomadic tribes of Germanic people referred to collectively as the Goths. The tribes flourished and spread throughout the late Roman Empire in late antiquity, or what is known as the migration period. The Visigoths emerged from early Gothic groups, possibly the Thervingi, who had invaded Roman Empire beginning in 376 and had defeated the Romans at the Battle of Adrianople in 378. Relations between the Romans and the Visigoths were variable, alternately warring with one another and making treaties when convenient. The Visigoths invaded Italy under Alaric and sacked Rome in 410. This is very important because this is like the first time Rome was sacked after like it became a real empire. After the Visigoths sacked Rome, they began settling down first in southern Gaul and eventually in Spain and Portugal, where they founded the Visigoth kingdom and maintained the present from the 5th to the 8th century AD. Okay, if I'm just gonna, like, the word Goth, some historians, or maybe most historians, I'm not sure, think that they originally came from Scandinavia, actually. And the word Goth in Norse language is Göt, and still to this day, this part of Sweden here is called Götaland, or here's the West Götaland and here's the East Götaland, and Gothland. You know, even also the island of Gotland is from that word. So some historians think that they kind of migrated down here, and then they hanged around here for a while, and then the Huns came, so they went to the other side of the Danube, and then the Romans didn't treat them very well, so they starved, and they kind of, they didn't treat them very well, so they rebelled. So that's why they had this the Battle of Adrianople, where they massacred the Roman army. And it was like that day's special forces. And later in 410 they sacked Rome, but then they moved down here to Spain and hanged around there until the Muslims came. Another important group is the Vandals, and many historians think they come from Scandinavia originally also. So I'm trying to find. There is a place in like about here that is called Vemdalen, but I'm not sure they had anything to do with the Vandals. But some historians think they came there too. But it's also a little bit unsure. It may be that a group of dudes went there and then they picked up some other Germanic dudes that followed them. So who knows where they come from? But the names seem to fit. Anyway, the Vandals. They went down to Spain also, and they later, because there was a Roman dude here in Carthago. He had some like realpolitik thing with another dude in Rome. So he sent a letter to the Vandals, and he wanted them to come and help him fight his political rival there. But then he realized that when they had crossed the sea there, he realized, he sent a letter to them and said, no, I don't want your help. But then it was too late, so the Vandals sacked Carthago, and then the East Rome, because by then the East and West had split, sent a fleet, and the Vandal king, what was his name? Vercingetorix or something like that. Anyway, he sent another fleet, and a much smaller fleet, but he kind of tricked them and sent some ships with like fueled with oil, and he burnt a huge part of the Roman fleet. Anyway, that's not so important, but it's important because when I listened to this lecture series with this Egyptian sheikh / historian, he says that the word Andalus comes from the Vandals, and it's kind of, so in Arabic they changed it to Wandal, and Wandal changed into Andal, so that's why they changed it to Andalus, according to him. I don't know if this is completely true, but this is like the anyway, if we go back to the guys that was important, the Visigoths. The Visigoth Kingdom. The Visigoth Kingdom was a Western European power in the 5th to 7th century, created in Gaul when the Romans lost their control of the western half of their empire. In response to the invasion of Roman Hispania of 409 by the Vandals, Alan Suebi Honorius, the empire in the west enlisted the aid of the Visigoths to regain control of the territory. In 418, Honorius rewarded his Visigoth federates by giving them land in Gallia Aquitania on which to settle. Anyway, so they hanged around there. They are the guys. Here you can see Visigoth Spain regional division prior to Muslim conquests. Yes. And should we jump then to... Wait a minute. Any questions about that, by the way?
No, I think let's go straight into the invasion of the Muslims from here then.
I would only like to point out that historically you might as well know that starting in that particular era, the ties between France and Spain were quite strong, and more like a family tie.
Yeah, the
It becomes very important later.
Yeah. We can talk about the Battle of Tours, or however you pronounce it. But yeah, the countries of Spain and France is later inventions. So they didn't see it in that way. This is just the period, you have to remember the period, the Roman Empire had been the dominant force for, I don't know how many thousands of years. And then suddenly you had this, I think, very important event in 410 when the Goths sacked Rome. And after that, and also the Roman Empire was split in two. So the western part was weakened a lot because of that. Anyway, okay, so the Umayyad conquest of Hispania. The Umayyad conquest of Hispania was the initial expansion of the Umayyad Caliphate over Hispania, largely extended from 711 to 788. The conquest resulted in the destruction of the Visigoth kingdom and the establishment of the independent empire of Cordova under Abdurrahman I, who completed the unification of Muslim-ruled Iberia, or the Andalus, 756 to 788. The conquest marks the westernmost expansion of both the Umayyad Caliphate and Muslim rule in Europe. Forces commanded by Tariq ibn Zayd disembarked in early 711 at Gibraltar at the head of an army consisting of Berbers, northwestern Africa. He campaigned his way northward after the decisive battle of Guadalete, I don't know how to pronounce that, against the usurper Roderick. Roderick was the Visigoth king. After which he was reinforced by the Arab force led by his superior Wali Musa ibn Nusayr by 717. The combined forces had crossed the Pyrenees into Septimania province, 734. Yeah, so that's when they came.
Do we know why they came? Did you uncover any sort of like inference that
No, but
Muslims were invited, like they were in Egypt?
Invited? Do you think they were invited?
No, the Muslims claim that there was some trouble going on in in Egypt, and they were invited to help on one side of the disagreement, and then they conquered Egypt as part of the deal. They, the history of Islam.
I don't know about that.
Yeah,
like you have to take that with a huge pinch of salt. But here you can see like how the conquest spread. So you see that it spreads throughout the Mediterranean here on the southern side, and here they pick up a lot of Berber tribes that joined them. So they reached there, and for those who are not looking, this is just a picture of. I'm going to talk a little about this documentary later. But anyway, there you can see. Then they went over to Spain. You can see the other. You know what? We talk about the Battle of.
Let's be careful playing this, just because they might copyright strike us.
Yeah, exactly.
Paste that link, if you would, into the main chat so people who want to watch that documentary can actually go and have a look at it.
Yeah. Okay, I can talk about that while I'm looking for the battle. I do it here instead.
Well, the funny thing is that this whole justification thing, of course, is that Muslims only have battles when it's in defense. So everybody remembers when the Spanish, the Algerians, the Libyans, the Egyptians, everybody was attacking the Arabian Peninsula, which is why they were defending themselves, of course, in Spain and Algeria and all the other places.
I mean, that is just like, it's kind of funny when you listen to when you listen to what when you listen to this sheikh / historian, Egyptian historian, and compare that to this documentary, like the Egyptian sheikh / historian, he's very honest. Like, we do the conquest because we're gonna spread Islam, we're gonna spread the Dawah, we're gonna free this all those barbarians from their jahl, their ignorance. So they are completely honest that it is a conquest, and they're, you know,
they're an empire.
Yeah, it's an empire, it's a conquest, it's not. But this documentary, this BBC documentary, I mean, sometimes I have to bring my shame pillow when I'm looking at that documentary, because they are like,
well, it's not a documentary at all, is it?
yeah, they are like sugarcoating it so much, it's insane. They're even like, I started laughing when I heard they say, there is a palace, I think it's called something like, what's it called?
Are you talking about the Alhambra?
The Green Palace or something. No, another one. The Green Palace or something like that. And he said the ruler, I don't remember what ruler it was, if it was Abdurrahman I or something like that. He built it for his favorite, she said. His favorite what?
It was his favorite female slave, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he didn't say anything about that. They completely left
how
that
well
out.
they treated the slaves. There you go.
No, but she didn't even mention slaves. So they are like sugarcoating it. That documentary is really insane.
That's a bit further on though.
They just went to Spain to create a free environment for the Christians and Jews that were constantly fighting there.
Yeah. So, okay, but if I'm gonna take this, the Battle of Tours, also called the Battle of Poitiers. I don't know how do you pronounce that. It's a place in France.
Poitiers.
Yeah, Poitiers.
Yeah, because that's where it stopped. This is where Charlemagne said Tours and Poitiers. This is it. Cheers, boys.
Yeah. So anyway, so that's where the conference stopped. The Battle of Tours, 10th October 732. And just to remember, I think the Prophet died allegedly in 632. So this is exactly 100 years after. Also called the Battle of Poitiers, and by Arab sources, the Battle of the Palace of the Martyrs, was fought between Frankish and Burgundian forces under Charles Martel. Charles Martel, he's, by the way, the father of Charlemagne, if I remember this correctly.
I got the name wrong.
Against an army of the Umayyad Caliphate by the Abdurrahman al-Rafiqi, Governor General of Al-Andalus. It was fought in an area between the cities of Poitiers and Tours.
What? Did you read how they did this allegedly?
No.
Well, allegedly they stole all the wagons, all the chariots where the Muslims were carrying the booty around.
Yeah, exactly. So
and they had these carriages follow them. And what the French did, they went around the army and simply took all the carriages, and the Muslims ran after them. And they said, "Stop! Don't steal our stuff we stole."
Yeah. So okay, so when the Muslims arrived, they had this very skilled cavalry, but the Franks, they occupied a high ground and they kind of dug in there. So they kind of waited for each other, but after a while, because this was quite late, it was like in October, it's starting to get cold, and the Muslim army, they got impatient, so let's attack them. So they attacked them, but according to the sources, the Franks stood like a wall. So the Frankish infantry stood there like a wall, but this Frankish king, or I don't know if king, but this Frankish leader, Charles Martel, who I think is the father of Charlemagne, if I remember, he was he had an idea, so he sent another force back to the Muslim camp that was a bit away, where they had stored all the war booty, because they just continued on and travel, like they brought the war booty with them. So then, when the rumors about that spread, and also this Abdurrahman al-Ghafiqi was killed when they attacked the Frankish infantry, so they all this together made them go back to the camp and flee back to the camp. And back in those days, fleeing from the battlefield is pretty much the most stupid thing that you can do. Not that many dudes are killed when it's like shield against shield, but as soon as you turn your back around and you let the enemy attack your back, so to speak, then a lot of people get killed, and a lot of Muslims was killed. I should just continue reading it. The Franks were victorious. Abdurrahman al-Ghafiqi was killed, and Charles subsequently extended his authority in the south. Details of the battle, including its exact location and number of combatants, cannot be determined from accounts that have survived. Notably, the Frankish troops won the battle without cavalry. 9th century chronicles, who interpreted the outcome of the battle as divine judgment in his favor, gave Charles the nickname Martellius, the Hammer. Here's why he's called Charles the Hammer. Later, Christian chronicles and pre-19th century historians praised Charles Martel as the champion of Christianity, characterizing the battle as the decisive turning point in the struggle against Islam, a struggle which preserved Christianity as the religion of Europe. According to modern military historian Victor Davis Hanson, most of the 18th and 19th century historians, like Gibbon, saw this place, Tours, as a landmark battle that marked the high tide of the Muslim advance into Europe. Leopold von Ranke felt that Poitiers was the turning point of one of the most important epochs in the history of the world. There was another historian, I don't remember what this was. Anyway, but they see this is very important. And it became important because after that, they didn't advance further into France. Yes. But what should we take now? Maybe we should just say something about, yes, so the Muslims ruled there for a long period of time. So they controlled Spain. Let's see, what's the exact dates? Al-Andalus.
Seems to suggest, according to what I've read here, that they sort of invaded around 711 AD, and they were finally defeated and surrendering Grenada to Ferdinand and Isabella in 1492. So that's well over 700 years. Call it 700.
Yeah, exactly.
Pretty much.
Yeah, so it's a long time. So what happened during all those centuries? I mean, you have to remember, if you take that from today it's 2017. How many, what was it, 700 years? Was it that?
780.
780. Yeah, so it's a long time.
Just on that point, obviously we have a comment from one of our Muslim viewers who's in the chat box, basically suggesting, as a number of Muslims do, that people wanted to be liberated, so they kind of welcomed these people in. And that's
no. There's another source that of a Christian guy during the conquest. He said something like that the number of Christians that were slain, you say it like that were killed, was only God knows the number of them. So there were so many that
Well,
couldn't count them.
there's an almanac which counted all the. Well, it's not counting. He went around and they took the different accounts that were recorded in churches and blah blah blah. And he took the people, he took letters, he took incidents, and he made a rough estimate. And he said 7 million people were killed. Now, 7 million in those days is a huge amount, actually.
Yeah,
you know,
that's
like a percentage of the entire world population. 7 million were killed at the time.
In Spain or in the whole Arab conquest?
No, only in Spain. No, only during. I think it's the first 300 or 400 years, and the estimate was 7 million people. So there's nothing there about. They did not raise the Quran and the people fell to the floor. No. They took the sword, and everybody who did not say Allah is the greatest was killed. Women were raped. I mean, it was horrible.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm going to say something to its defense, I mean, that period in general was a horrible period. So it's not like...
Well, that's why I wanted you to talk about the original pre-Islamic history, because it doesn't paint a horrible period for the Spanish. They'd already been invaded by the Visigoths, who had settled down. And after a couple of 100 years, can you assume they might have forged some kind of peace with the locals? And they were no longer having revolts and rebellions.
This is the point. They sort of assimilated and they sort of came to terms, and the people started accepting it, because then after a while, everybody was too tired to fight anymore. This is why when the Muslims came, people were exhausted. They didn't want to fight anymore. A lot of people simply said, listen, fuck this, not again. Okay, who is it now? Who is it now? And they just said, okay, well, then it's just the next invasion. And they just said, well, forget it. I'm just going with the flow, and that's it.
Yes.
No, but look, according to this claim, it is the Visigoths themselves that welcome the Muslim rulers.
Well, here's a short quote from that book itself. The history of the Islamic Spain begins, of course, with a violent conquest helped by internal dissension among the Visigoths in 711 AD. Islamic warriors entered Christian Spain and defeated the Visigoth king Rodrigo. So it was internal dissension, and for those who don't understand English as well, that just means internal fighting amongst them. And so that obviously opened the door or made it easier for them to be defeated. I don't see any history where it says that they welcomed or asked to be defeated or to be taken over.
They make this claim.
Yeah, but they say this about Egypt too. This is the problem. There's a lot of Muslim apologists who say the Egyptians invited the Muslims to oust the Roman what do you want to call them? Emperors or the suppressors or whatever, because they wanted to get rid of the Romans, so they invited the Muslims over and to suppress them. Now, come on, you don't send a letter to the Muslims and say, please, can you invade us? You don't fucking do that. It's ridiculous. And then you have accounts because of this. There's a priest by the name of Q or something, and he wrote down how many of these people were killed and how gruesome and terrible and brutal is exactly what you're saying. The time was brutal. How brutal the Muslims were. How many they killed and raped and beheaded and put the heads outside, which seemed to be like the favorite pastime in those days. And that's it. So don't come to me and tell me everything was peaceful and they were invited over. Don't lie.
And why, if they invited them, why did they fought? Why did they fight them?
It's a bit like inviting America over into Africa. They come, but they never leave.
No, but like it's more like saying like, yeah, but the Polish guys, they invited the Germans to come.
And the Russians.
And the Russians.
Yes,
then they come and then they try to defend themselves, but who cares? Like, yeah. So that is not true.
So where are you up to now in the history of Spain? What year are we in?
We are talking about the conquest. I don't know where we lived. We lived the Battle of Tours where they stopped. I just wanted to give a figure of how long this reign is. So if it's 780 years, if you take 780 years from now back in time, you would end up in 1237. So that's
it was different rulers, though, wasn't it? So when I read through this,
it's different rulers, but I just
it wasn't all the same Muslims,
and even different outlooks. Because I was just looking at El Cid, the famous hero of Spain, and his time is from 1040 to 1099, and he actually fought with the Muslims side by side with them. So in a space of 200 years, Spain had changed where Christians and Muslims were working together.
There were some
that I can see here.
There were some guys that tried to.
But it's also interesting to note that El Cid was also fighting against the Moors with the Muslims on his side. So there's obviously something dynamic going on where it's not a simple them versus us. Islam has splintered into Muslims who want to side with the Christians and Muslims who want to occupy both of them.
You say side with them. What they appeared to do here was to so one of the things that they said here, the early Muslim invaders were relatively small in numbers, so it was politically prudent to grant religious autonomy to Catholics. Therefore, they maintained the Catholics in a state of dimitude. So that was in the beginning. Catholics fleeing Muslim rule lost all protection and their property was confiscated by the conquerors. Tolerance at this extreme, notes historian Robert Burns, is not easily distinguished from intolerance.
Yeah, this is the thing. Another thing I'd like to note, if you look at this number, 780, a lot of Muslim apologists come and say, well, look at the British, the colonization and the colonialism. Like if you look at India, if you look at other places. Yeah, but hang on. Muslims did this 1,000 years earlier. And this is something that Muslims don't seem to want or don't seem to be able to see and don't seem to be able to acknowledge. They had colonies everywhere. This is how Islam spread. And even today, if I take a country like I don't know, it doesn't matter, Libya, they have not released it. It is still being occupied. And this is something that I don't see Muslims acknowledging.
Yeah. Motherfucker. What's up?
Just
gangster
that
rap,
nigga. Okay.
Nigga. I'm 100% nigga.
Harrison, do you want to turn up your...
Nigga. I'm 200% nigga. Nigga.
Okay, so...
Fucking police hate nigga.
Somebody's joined here. Let's just... Okay, so we've ejected that gentleman there for making a lot of noise. Saracen, you had welcome to the show. I just muted you. I don't know if you had your audio going there. Somebody else jumped in there and just played some crappy audio. So if you want to unmute yourself, welcome to the show. I think the big thing here is, we all acknowledge, and certainly from a European Western perspective, that there was slavery, that there was conquest, that there was colonialization, etc. All of those things we acknowledge in our past history. I think what I hear from some Muslims is they don't want to acknowledge that there was slavery. They don't want to acknowledge there was conquest without them, being defended. They went out there and literally, took over countries. And I think, all we need to say is that that both, let's call it, civilizations did that, but to try and cover it up and suggest that wasn't the case, I think is very disingenuous. Nobody in Western Europe is going to suggest that we didn't do those in our history, and it would be honest if Muslims could say, hey, in our history we don't agree with that, or whatever the case is, or not, but it did happen. Just acknowledge that it happened.
But we don't have the same sort of history regarding slavery as Islam does.
I mean, that was obviously the previous show. I mean, we both had history, and it certainly seems like on the numbers when I did look at it that, yes, Islam had got into Africa, if we talk about Africa at that stage, before, Europeans did.
I don't know of many European countries that were traveling across the Mediterranean seas into.
We wear sandals, and yet we have sex with goats and ride camels.
Oh, here we go.
You know, people, why do they think this is impressing?
Yes, it's not a problem. I don't worry. We'll just keep ejecting them, and it doesn't reflect on anybody else or any particular ideology or anything. You'll get, if you've got an open thing, you'll just have that happening, unfortunately. I don't want to get too much onto slavery.
I know in the end, the Europeans, when they started forming their early empires, they started to pay the caliphate money to not be attacked by the pirates. And that carried on right up until the 1700s.
Hi, Rob. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yes, welcome. Yeah.
Hi. Yeah, I'm Saracen 786.
Just make yourself a little bit louder if you can.
Yeah, let me see if I can put this louder. So I'm a British Pakistani Muslim, and I met you at Hyde Park this weekend. I briefly chatted to you. I think you were speaking to Alex at the time.
Yes. I was speaking a lot to Alex.
Yeah. So I've been listening to your shows attentively. I purely joined because I really respect you as a person. I believe that you are a genuine person, and I believe you are genuinely looking for the truth. I've listened to the Jinn&Tonic show. I think Pull-Ups invited me a few times to come on the show. And with that, basically, I've taken up that invitation to just give you a Muslim perspective on different things. So hopefully we can have a civilized discussion. I'm not really here to debate things, but I'm certainly here to engage and give you my views.
Well, welcome.
Yeah, absolutely. We do welcome you, and obviously, thank you for coming almost in a sense into the lion's den, because everybody else in here is a non-believer. We will treat you with as much respect as obviously we can. I can't speak for everybody else. I'll do the best I can, but I do think all my co-hosts here will do the same.
Yeah.
And obviously we're looking for otherwise it's just an echo chamber. So we are looking for alternative views. What I hope you're open to is having a discussion. So if you put forward a view or a particular point, we can discuss that, because it may be that we agree with you, it may be that we don't, and there might be evidence one way or the other. And this is not about, schooling somebody or any of that sort of schoolyard nonsense.
You've got to give them a chance to speak,
No, I'm listening, please.
I'd like to hear your voice, Sarah.
Okay, Saracen, you said something very interesting in the beginning. If I could just ask for clarification, you said that Rob was looking for the truth.
Yeah.
What is the truth?
So for me, what the truth is I think we're all on a journey to find the truth. Is it found via scripture? Is it found via science? Are they incompatible? What is it that what we're searching for? I think everyone's truth is perhaps in their own way what they feel, how to make sense of life. Some people find that within religion, some people find that in other ways. Me myself, I find truth. I don't think it's limited to one thing. I don't think it's purely from religion. I've got a very open mind. I listen to your talks. I listen to different perspectives. I think the problem that I find most certainly with a lot of Muslims is they just feel if it's not in the Qur'an and if it's not in the Sunnah, then we can't take it. And I think this has never been the Muslim approach. This is a quite recent sort of approach, a very fundamentalist approach that is crept within Islam. I'm not saying that there wasn't other past scholars that had this approach. There certainly was. Ibn Taymiyyah was one. But I think the school that I come from, and I'll be very clear in the school that I come from the largest Sunni school, which is the Hanafi school, which is the most rationalistic school, which is the most open school, which doesn't believe in killing homosexuals, throwing them off buildings, or anything like that, which is a very humane school, which believes in natural law. And my school is also the oldest Sunni school that exists today. Unfortunately, it's also been taken over by loons in recent years, especially in the most modern times, from people from India, Pakistan. They've kind of made it a bit more harsher from the spirit of how it used to be. But I'm open to different interpretations. I'm a student of history. I used to be an extremist. Those of you who watched my channel will understand this. I used to hang around with Anjem Chowdhury. That's how I learned Islam. I used to be part of the Wahhabi group. And thank goodness I reject that now.
So, okay, this is a whole lot of information and this is brilliant stuff. And I really appreciate you sharing this with us. I'm still on this truth thing.
Yes.
Can you give me an example of truth?
I probably can't give you an example of truth, if I'm being honest with you. I believe everyone's truth is their own, what they find. I believe we can try to understand reality, but in short, you know, we're all on this journey. We're all on a personal journey. We're all trying to make sense of the world. For me,
so I'm not.
Okay, that's fine.
That's why I'm asking, what is the truth? Because you said somebody is looking for the truth, is hidden somewhere in the mountains under a stone or something.
No.
And if you open that, then you have the truth. And I don't understand the truth. I don't understand what that is. That's why I'm asking you, can you explain this to me?
And I think perhaps I should phrase it in another way. Truth is subjective to everyone. Truth is what you feel truth is. I think how we make sense of the world, I don't think I can be any more succinct than that.
I think I would disagree a little bit with you there, Saracen. If I just take a dictionary definition of it,
Sure.
and you can tell me if you agree. Truth is that which is true, or which is kind of a tautology, or in accordance with fact or reality. So truth is something that purports to represent reality. And if that is the case,
or logical.
Say again.
Or is logical, because you can have two different kinds.
I think I can agree with Saracen, but I would change the word from truth to contentment.
Yeah. What about what do you think about metaphysics, which great people like Plato believed in the past? Surely is that not one branch of knowledge? I think recently we've kind of gone with this imperialist model that's the only way to find truth. What do you guys think of metaphysics?
I mean, anything's possible, but we do need to agree on what we mean with certain words. And if we, because now we've gone from truth to knowledge, which, you know, they are similar, but not exactly the same. But if we sort of stick with truth, and if we accept that, you know, broadly speaking, you know, it's in accordance with fact or reality, so it matches reality. I think if I understand you, you want truth to match reality. So whatever's real out there, presumably you want to match with that, whatever that is.
I think to some degree that's we can see it like that, but I think there's other dimensions that need to be investigated as well, such as the spiritual dimension. That's experience.
Why? Why do you believe this?
Because I mean, there's many people that have experiences, and experiences are very personal. You cannot say that experience isn't real to a person. Yes, you can say that person's a loon or that person's deluded, but you can't say that is wrong. That's a very personal thing. And
is that a reason to accept it?
It depends. It depends on a number of things. For me, I've experienced certain things and I know that they're real.
So if I'm saying I've got a fire-spitting, huge flying monster dragon in the garage, you will say, oh, okay, that's cool.
No, then we go into, I think Rob's probably good at this, belief. You know, is it a basic belief? Is it a justified true belief? You know, and we can investigate that.
How do you investigate that? If I say, well, it's undetectable.
Then we do kind of look into empiricism, and we do look into things like that. I mean, if you're going back, to be honest with you, I'm not really here to debate atheism and stuff like that.
No, I'm just trying to understand.
Yeah, no, I've come more to speak about. I mean, we've got a subject. Forgive me. We've got a subject that we're discussing, and I just wanted to participate in that. If you want to discuss that, I'll probably be better prepared in a few weeks' time. That's just my thoughts on that.
What fascinates me is what you said, is that personal testimony for you has a weight, where for me it has zero weight. Yeah. And this fascinates me, how somebody can say, well, if somebody tells me something, I should consider it, where I think, no, I shouldn't. This is what is so interesting, how different people are and how different people see the same identical thing from a different viewpoint. And this is what I find absolutely fascinating.
Okay, but stops in Saracen's defense there. When you say you don't accept personal testimony, I think that's a blanket statement that you may want to roll back a little bit. I think it depends on the nature of the claim. If somebody suggests to you that they have a dog at home, you're very likely to accept that. The more extraordinary the claim, the less likely you are to just accept personal testimony. But I think the other thing Saracen said was, if somebody has an experience, it's true for them. And I think I'd make a differentiation there, and then we can get back to the Andalusian thing, but a differentiation between experience and knowledge or truth. So if somebody has an experience, I can never deny that they've had what they think is an experience. If they want me to believe that experience or to share it as what they consider knowledge, then they have to look outside of themselves. I cannot see a way that they can internally justify knowledge to somebody else. So they can say, hey, I had this experience of speaking to Jesus or speaking to an angel or whatever it is. I cannot deny that's what they believe. What I can question quite seriously is whether that is a knowledge claim or that's a truth claim. Now, as you quite rightly pointed out, we need some other method, be it the scientific method or some other method that somebody's going to propose that we can look into this. And if we can't, and it's an extraordinary claim, then I think it's reasonable to reject that claim until or if we can somehow verify it, because people make crazy claims all the time. If I ask Saracen,
this brings us back to metaphysics.
It does in a way, but if I asked Saracen, do you believe in aliens? What would be your response?
I would say that there's no evidence for aliens, but I can't deny them either.
Yes, sure. But if somebody said they saw an alien, would you accept that as a knowledge claim, or would you just go, okay, that's your subjective view?
I think if it was just one person. So, for example, I think this is a decent conversation. Let's take an example. For example, prophets. Now, if a prophet makes a prophecy, you can either say this person's a loon, this person's a charlatan. But if he's made a number of prophecies and they've come true. Now, I know we discussed this last week, you discussed how broad some of these prophecies are. I respect that and I take that on board. But let's say there's maybe 10 sort of predictions and all 10 come true. That would, for me, would suggest that perhaps that experience was real. And then we have to investigate that further.
Sure, I agree. If somebody made 10 predictions and they were very accurate and they all came true, and let's say just the 5 of us in this chat room now all agreed, if we put down, if a particular prophecy was put forward and we all agreed with the criteria of the prophecy and we had more than one, then we would definitely look seriously and go, okay. But even if that was the case, even if 10 prophecies came true and they were highly accurate, very specific dates, times, you name it, that in and of itself doesn't prove that there's a divine creator. It just means that somebody was able to foresee the future. And there are people who do that already today, and they don't claim any creator. So they're just going, it's my own power. So again, all that does is say that there's an extraordinary claim that may have been met. So it could be that a prophet has got some extraordinary knowledge. That's possible, assuming we could verify the claims.
The prophecy would have to go against the laws of nature to be of any tangible strength. I mean, any man can predict the future if the odds are low enough for him to be able to predict.
Yeah, but that's why I'm saying, GP, if, for example, there was a prophecy that said...
But if I was to say, I prophesize that the great fiery dragon from Stop Spamming's garage will split the moon in two, and it happens, that is a pretty extraordinary claim that should never happen in the real world. And if you saw it happening, I think you would have to say, wow, maybe the GPZ is right about his prophecies here. He has got some kind of divine person to talk to and get this kind of knowledge.
No, but that's exactly what I said, GP. You can't make that inference. You can't make the inference that you're speaking to somebody divine. All we could say is that you have some foreknowledge, and that's unusual or extraordinary. That doesn't necessarily mean there's a creator.
Well, what would... Sorry, go on, please.
I was just saying, the prophecy would have to be something extraordinary.
No, but it doesn't.
It would have to defy nature entirely. In other words, it could only happen because of a god.
Okay, but not all prophecies are like that, are they, GP? So if I said to you, for example...
prophecy just means somebody who could talk on behalf of God.
it just means, well, okay, that's your version, I suppose. I would just say it's somebody that predicts something in the future. Think of that Harold Camping. Does everybody know who Harold Camping was? He was that Christian guy that predicted in October of 2012 that the world will come to an end.
Yeah, he's done it several times, hasn't he?
Correct.
What would you guys say if, let's say, those prophecies, for example, knowledge of the past? So one of the things that Muslims claim is that in the Quran, there's many things that it's impossible or inconceivable for the Prophet, peace be upon him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to have known. So, for example, there's very subtle things like the Egyptian dynasty. There was a time where they used to be called kings, and they changed to pharaohs. That's in the Quran. So there's stuff that's happened in the past, and there's many things within that. And there's stuff that happened at the time. That, for example, when the Persians and the Romans were fighting, there's things that says that, at the time it was impossible. Well, it was highly unlikely that the Persians would have been defeated, because this was the time of the actual Quran, and the Romans won.
Saracen, do you actually believe this?
Yes, I do.
But
Yeah.
you've been conned. You've been lied to, because it's not true. It's not in the Quran. It doesn't say anything like that.
They're true at Rome.
Disbelieve people, and that's it. It's not true.
Okay, but before we go there, we can have that discussion. Would it be useful, and I know you're not prepared, and you've sort of made a claim, I'm not going to hold you to it here, and Stops has said, no, it isn't. So what we could do, if you're interested, Saracen, is then have a show on prophecies. You bring, let's say, 3 to 5 of the prophecies you consider are the most reliable, the best prophecies possible, and we will examine it. And we'll ask you some questions, and we'll see where we get.
Yeah.
Maybe let's do it as a show. I'm not available next week, so it could be that Stops and Abu could host it. If you're not available next week, we'll do it in a couple of weeks' time, whatever. I don't want to get too far into that, because we can do a whole show on that. And then I'd rather you have time, you've thought about it, you've maybe spoken to other people.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair. I think for me, I'd be doing a disservice if I was just to speak off the top of my head. And I think likewise, anyone that challenges me, they should be prepared for that. And I think that's probably sensible, Rob. But
Rob, you're right. And this is why I wanted to suggest now, Saracen, what do you know about the story in Andalusian Spain, about the Umayyads and this whole episode in the Iberian Peninsula?
Okay, so my understanding was that the Umayyad caliphs, they appropriated religion for personal benefit. So at the moment, I'm reading a book by Dr. Khalid Blankenship. It's called The End of the Jihad State. What the book is about is that this concept of jihad that's often misquoted. Jihad didn't just mean like warfare initially. It meant initially a spiritual struggle, one of chivalry, and it wasn't there to dominate the world. However, the Umayyads, who were very latecomers to Islam, they realized that this could be politically expedient. So they used this concept of jihad, and they went for world domination. The Umayyad Empire was very much, it was exactly that. It was more of an Arab empire. The official Umayyad policy was not to convert people to Islam. That's just historical fact. What they wanted to do is take over regions, and people had to become wali, who were clients. So there was, if you weren't an Arab, you pretty much had to join a clan, and you had second-class citizenship. They went all across the world, from Spain to India, and they were quite ruthless. So I'm not one of those Muslims that are going to defend Muslims right or wrong. I'm going to acknowledge history where they've done wrong. I would say in the defense that they were invited to Spain, and perhaps I don't want to go off on a monologue, so perhaps we can discuss that after.
Perhaps you can share with us if you've got any information on that. So either paste a link or something like that, because that's not what we've found. So now we have competing views here, and obviously, logic dictates that only one of them can be true, unless we're in the quantum world, but I don't see that being the case. So as long as we're in the macro world, you're suggesting that they were invited. We are looking at it as in they invaded and were able to take over because there was dissension currently in the country. And it could have been that people kind of were okay with it or didn't know what they were getting themselves into. So it could be, and I'm not suggesting it is, but it could be that they had these new invaders come in and went, do you know what, the Visigoths were so bad, you guys might be better. That could have happened.
I think there's certainly an element of that. I mean, I did a course with Amira Benison, who's a professor of history at Oxford University, and she's an expert on this. And what I'm saying to you is from her opinion. Roderick was a horrible, horrible man. You know, and I'm not saying I'm not one that says, oh, Muslims all good, Christians all bad. I don't believe that. I think we've got plenty of foul, disgusting Muslims in our history. But I do believe, if we're going to be fair, that there was a lot of dispute. There was high taxes within Spain. The Jews were treated incredibly bad. They were made to wear certain clothing to identify them. And in fairness, Muslims did the same in the future. But what we also have to understand is that the Visigoths and the Vandals, they were Arian Christians. So they didn't believe in the Trinity. There was a lot of dissent within that. There was a lot of internal fighting. There is a story of Roderick taking the daughter and raping one of the daughters of a famous count, and the count then invited Muslims in. Whether that's apocryphal, I don't know, but certainly from my research, I have understood that the Muslims were invited. Abdul Rahman III, who was the last Umayyad Caliph, came, and by and large, they did a great job there.
When you say they did a great job, let's put aside for the moment, because we've got a potentially disagreement about how they entered Spain.
Yeah.
Let's assume they were invited. Roderick was a bloodthirsty, terrible guy. And somebody, I don't know who would have invited him other than the king, maybe some people who were rebelling against him. Let's assume that they in some way were invited. Is your further view that once they got in that 780-year period that they were in Spain, is your view that they treated the Catholics or the Christians and Catholics and Jews better or the same as they were treated before? Because what's your view on that?
I think there's a few things. The early Umayyads, I think they weren't very religious. I think that needs, and we have historical kind of documents to suggest that they were very lavish. They pretty much took over the empire of the Byzantines and a bit of the Persians. You know, they had these harems full of women. They weren't exactly the best Muslims, but what they did do is invest in the infrastructure, in buildings, in coinage, in civilizing society.
Are you there?
Yeah, sorry, I got this. If we are to say that the whole of the 750 years, no chance. We had the Almoravids and the Almohads who were, they believed it. They came from the deserts. They came from the deserts of Africa. They're what we now know are the Moors, and they wanted it a very Puritan kind of, because they were harsh. They came from a harsh land. They kind of they challenged the Umayyads. They burned buildings. We have instances in Fez where Jews and Christians were persecuted. You know, it would be wrong to deny that. But what I would say is that was more the exception rather than the norm. We had great Jews like Ibn Shaput, who was a governor who became one of the army generals in the Spanish, one of the Spanish Safe Kingdoms. You know, we've had Maimonides, you know, and I think we have to be fair. I think, you know, by and whole, for the time period, if we are going to compare it, you know, we have Toledo University. It was a very civilized place.
Okay, I guess it depends what you mean by civilized. I'm going to post a link there into our chat here in the discussion. I've posted into the other one. Maybe download that PDF, and when you get a chance, have a read over it and see what you think, because that is part of the Andalusian paradise myth that was written by this gentleman, and from which I'm taking some information here. Sure. And at no point were they treated as equals in my reading, anywhere at any time. The best they were, if I go back to that little bit there, the early Muslim invaders were relatively small in numbers, so it was politically prudent to grant religious autonomy to Catholics. They therefore maintained the Catholics in a state of dimitude. So it seems to me that even from the beginning, and as you say, it got worse with more fundamentalists coming in the late 7th century or 8th century, whenever it was. Here I'm looking. But at no point were the people that were taken over by, let's call it under the umbrella term, Muslims, at no point were they equal. So they were always, in the best of circumstances, they were dhimmis or in dimitude to their rulers.
I think we have to be fair. I think we have to look at it from that time. Dimitude was something that existed pre-Islam. It's not something that the Muslims invented. If we look at the Byzantine Empire, you had, if you weren't a Christian, you were under what Robert Hoyland talks about in Arab conquest, by and large, dimitude. It's not something that the Muslims invented. Yes, there was this probably a supremacist kind of feeling. I can accept that. But by and whole, I don't think it was, if we compare it to other places, it wasn't a sort of place where, Christians or Catholics were under constant siege. And, it was nothing like the Spanish Inquisition where they weren't allowed to put it. Because in Islam, a dhimmi has many rights within Islam. One of them is to set up their own courts. One of them is to set up their own they can eat, they can have alcohol, they can eat pork if they choose. Obviously not Jews, the Christians, and we have historical evidence of that. There were certainly some Christians who weren't happy, as not many Jews, but mainly Christians who weren't happy with the Muslim conquest. I can accept that.
Let me read you a little bit and tell me your thoughts on the following. I'll just read you a short little bit here. The founder of the Emirate of Cordoba, Abu al-Rahman I, the emigrant, had to flee Syria to avoid the extermination ordered against his Umayyad, I will pronounce it wrong, Umayyad, I guess it is, family by, sorry?
Umayyad family. Yeah.
Umayyad, thank you. By the rival Abbasids. Is that Abbasids?
Yes, Abbasids, that's correct.
Allied with the Berbers of North Africa, or otherwise known as the Moors, and helped by the Yemeni and Syrian settlers in Spain, willing to betray their masters, he proceeded to enter Spain from Africa, defeat the Abbasid, governor of Andalusian in 756, and make himself emir. He kept peace among the Muslims and between the Muslims, Catholics, and Jews by means of an army of more than 40,000 soldiers. It was he who ordered the demolition of the ancient Catholic church at Cordoba to build the much admired mosque. During his reign, the Catholics suffered confiscations of property, enslavement, and increases in their exacted tribute, which helped finance the embellishment of Islamic Cordoba. So that's just Abu Rahman the first and second.
Yeah, it's possible. Like I said, I'm not here. I think I'm not for Muslim dynasties. I think that by and large, the Umayyad dynasty was a very vile dynasty. I don't agree with Islamic supremacy. I agree with the early caliphs, the first 5 caliphs up to Imam Hassan. I don't believe that Islam. I think people have misused this word jihad and this Islamic supremacy, both the Abbasids and the Umayyads. I think they were empires. That's my opinion on that. So yeah, I'm open to that. That they perhaps did persecute people. I'm open to that. I don't know enough about it.
Can I jump in now?
Please go ahead.
I've been researching some architecture stuff. Was one interesting thing you said Imam Ahmed. What did you say? Imam Hassan, or the last thing you said? Because are you really a Sunni?
I'm a Sunni. Yeah. I'm not Wahhabi, which I know is what you follow.
But when you say Imam Hassan,
does
that have any extra meaning for you?
No, there's the the early Khilafah Rashidun was 30 years, and if we finish 30 years, it finishes with Imam Hassan, and that's after Imam Ali.
Yeah, Ali was okay, because I get this feeling that it's almost a kind of that it's bordering on Shiism. But anyway, if I'm gonna, I've been listening to a lot of things now. So if we start, the main thing is, you said that this school that you are following, that is the original school of Sunnism. Spamming. Okay, good. So this is kind of the original school of Sunnism, and that the first Muslims really followed this, and that the first Muslim really didn't interpret jihad and all these things, meaning warfare, but it was more a spiritual seeking. I'm wondering, is this really true? Is this really how they interpreted it? Because even the four Khulafa Rashidun, they made jihad, they took slaves, they conquered lands. I mean, even the Prophet. If you're a Sunni, do you even accept the Sunnah? Do you even accept the Ahadith? I think you.
Sorry, I'm listening. My son just come home, and he's so I'm just attending to him. Please carry on the conversation. I'll join you shortly.
Yeah, okay, just mute yourself for a second, then yeah, when you're ready, come back in.
Okay, then I wait with this.
I think also, Abu, what we can do, if Saracen's open to that, it's great to have somebody here. So again, it's our appreciation to have somebody come on and share their views. But what I think we can do, if Saracen wants to become a regular contributor and part of the Hangouts in future, what we can do is have different shows based on these that we can, have that conversation where he can specifically talk about the schools of Islam. You're obviously very knowledgeable in that. And then you can have that conversation and we can listen in and just listen to the two of you, for example, if that's one of the things. You might throw a lot at him now, which he isn't prepared for. So I'm just...
Yeah, exactly. I'm very thankful that he come on the show. I wish he come on the show more times. So, yeah. Okay, so...
I suppose, yeah, as I say, what we can do is then if you got those questions, maybe we can start to do shows around things, because I think otherwise it'll run on. If you're going to throw a lot of questions at him about different things all over the show to question, is he really Sunni, or is that the best school, or whatever the case is, those are valid questions to ask. I think maybe let's do a show on kind of a couple of those topics, for example, and then you guys can have that conversation, we can listen, that sort of thing, and then obviously I can have it on sort of the broader topics that I'm interested in as well, because obviously you've got the expertise in reading the the Qur'an, etc., and I'm sort of more interested at this stage on the broader issues of some of the claims that are made.
Yeah, we can talk about that another time, but I was just interesting
yeah, maybe what you can do is just sort of ask Saracen some questions so that you in particular, but us, can understand where he comes from. So obviously he's mentioned that he's from Sunni, he's mentioned the school that he follows. Maybe get some other clarifying questions so that you're clear next time he comes on the show, where his point of view, where is he coming from? Because obviously there is differences.
The thing is, I don't understand really where he comes from. So I'm
fair enough.
Yeah. Okay. So where were we? If we go back to the history here, I was looking a lot of the architecture and things, but maybe
I mean, I think we have got a general idea here, and I've sent the PDF as well to both people. I mean, if you want to carry on, we can. It seems like that there was Muslim conquest over the 780 years. It changed between different, let's call them invaders, all under the banner of Islam, even though they might have had slightly different views. They're all under the banner of Islam. And so, they were finally defeated and pushed back in 1492, I think, from what I could see there. My main, and give me your views, my main point for this is, and I think Saracens kind of said it to a point, is for Muslims to agree that this was an invasion like any other. What it's portrayed as, and as we look under the surface, it's portrayed as being a paradise. In other words, it was considerably better than anything else either going on in Europe or in Spain at any time. And from what I can see and from what you've said, that doesn't appear to be the case. If we were extremely charitable, which again I'm hesitant to do, but if we were, it doesn't seem like the population of Spain, let's call it, was any better under the Muslim rule at any stage in that 780 years, and seemingly potentially worse at some stages. And that's what I'd like Muslims to acknowledge.
It's very hard to if you're going to ask that question, you have to really make a difference between apples and oranges, and you have to yes, as I said, the period after Rome was sacked, you had a lot of problems, and you had a lot of scorched earth and things like that. So, but we can just say, when we look at things like slavery and the dimitude and like how they profited from jizya, the kind of poll tax, and especially we look at slavery. If you read this book, I can recommend this book by this Dario Fernandez, or what's it called?
Yeah, just pop it in the link there if you've got it.
He's has PhD from Harvard and MD from some other things. Anyway, but he goes through these things like how another important thing that I wanted to bring up is that he says in the book is that they mainly follow the school of Imam Malik. So there are these four main imams: Abu Hanifa, Imam Malik, Imam Shafi'i, and Ahmed ibn Hanbal. So they mainly follow the Maliki school. And so in the book he talks about things like the view on slavery and a lot of things. He also talks about, like, for example, female so-called circumcision or genital mutilation. We come to the conclusion that must have been very common in Muslim Spain. So is that something that is good? Another thing that I think is kind of un-Islamic, that is even maybe more gruesome in a way, is like they had a lot of so-called black eunuchs, that is castrated men that works in the harems of the rulers. But I wouldn't say that Islamic, really. You can blame that on Islam. But the slavery and sexual slavery and all those things are definitely part of Islam. That was very profitable. So it was to say that it was just sugar and spice, everything nice, that's not really correct.
It certainly seems to me that using the word Andalusian paradise, I think, is misplaced, because people think of a paradise, certainly in modern days, as being, a place where everybody would want to live. They're free to do whatever they want, kind of like an ideal Western world. Now, we obviously don't have an ideal world, but if there was such a thing, that's my view of paradise. Other people may have a different one. Maybe paradise for religious people is heaven. I'd love them to explain what their picture of that is. But for me, paradise on earth would be, an absolutely.
I wonder what the Muslims. Maybe that's
I don't know who coined that term. Even I mean, it's when I listen to this kind of, when Muslims speak about this period, they don't talk about the period in that way. They're talking about it in strictly religious terms, and they are kind of the things that we kind of praise Muslim Spain for, like the architecture and things like that. Many of those things they see as decadence, and like that God is giving them fitna of a lot of money and things like that. So I don't know. My feeling is that there is this, Europeans have a kind of psychological problems that they are indulging themselves in a kind of self-hatred, and part of that self-hatred is to like talk bad about their own culture and praising other cultures.
No.
And in that, what?
No. Imagine you come from a desert tribe and all you're used to is living in tents and fighting wars, and then you go into Spain and you conquer, and you've got all this vast wealth, and now you can spend money on all these architects and people to glorify your religion. You're going to say it's a golden age. You're not going to...
That's a good segue to the subject that I would like to talk about, because one of the things that I like about Muslim Spain, I mean, the architecture of that period I find to be completely gorgeous. I mean, some of
it isn't Islamic. None of it is.
It
was all stolen from the Byzantium Christians.
Yeah, the design of this is actually. Wait a minute.
Well, it's
so this is the.
It was
yes,
built
it's
on the
Visigoth
Visigoth
/ Roman
exactly
design. So this is the Church of or now it's a church, a Catholic church, but it started out as a mosque. For the first, this mosque was built over the ruins of another church that probably had similar design, but we don't know exactly. And then, as he said in this book, the Dario Fernandez, that in a kind of karmic justice, when the Christians come, they turned it once again into a Christian church.
Well, it never pointed towards Mecca, did it?
That's another story. I haven't dug into that too much. But they built it on the site that there was a Christian church before. But if we look at this, this architecture here has clearly inspired the architecture of my former mosque in Medina. Here you can see here the horseshoe arc.
Oh wow!
If I read about
True, absolutely.
Talk about the horseshoe arc, Spanish Arco de Herodaria. I don't know how to pronounce that. Also called the Moorish arc, and the Kalo arc is an emblematic arc of Moorish architecture. Horseshoe arches can take rounded, pointed, or lobed form. Horseshoe arches are known from pre-Islamic Syria, where the form was used in 4th century CE in Babs. Anyway, the point is, when they conquered the different lands, not only in Spain, but also when they conquered Byzantine areas, they kind of steal the style, the architectural style that already was there. So in the eastern part, you're going to see a lot of Byzantine style that was kind of East Roman style, and in Spain, the Visigoths were there, and the Visigoths kind of continued a tradition from kind of Western Roman style. So what they call Muslim style is actually Visigoth / Roman style, or Hispano-Visigoth Roman
but Abu,
style.
this is your old mosque?
And this is my old mosque.
Does it point north or south?
No, this is my own. This in Medina.
Yeah. The Medina mosque. Does it point north or south? Does it north to Petra or south to Mecca?
To Mecca.
Ah, okay. Just checking.
Why did you ask that? I don't know.
Well,
I feel that
a lot of the early mosques don't point towards Mecca. Anything before the 9th century does not point towards Mecca.
Yeah, I think that's the case with some of the earliest mosques in Andalus. That it's true, but I haven't.
Yeah, to be fair though, that's in dispute. I don't know that we can make those absolute statements.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. I think Mansour had a debate with Jay Smith about that. You could probably find the video on YouTube, and I think that's just a fake. The guy who made that theory up, he's got no credentials, and he's been proven wrong on that. But again, I'll let you investigate that for yourself.
Okay, I'm sorry. I don't trust Mansour's opinion.
No, but that's fine. I agree with you. I wouldn't trust Mansour either. But at this moment in time, let's just say it's in debate. We're not
exactly.
certain
Okay.
one way or the other.
Can I just?
No, but I have measured a lot of these mosques, and they don't. Okay, I've looked into this, especially in the let's say, okay, I maintain the Quran was conceived in the 9th century. So any time before then, the mosque did not point to Mecca. Mecca did not exist in those days.
How many degrees does it need to face? Does it have to be completely facing, or is there a debate in Islam to how many degrees it needs?
No, okay, my criteria would be 15 degrees.
Yeah, well, in the Hanafi fiqh, it's 180 degrees.
Okay.
Okay, that does sound a little bit, in which case, So are you saying, Saracen, that in that particular school, as long as a mosque is facing within 180 degrees of Mecca, that's
I think if people listen, the spirit is to pray towards Mecca. Now, if God is not going to reject your prayer if you're, 10 degrees off or 5 degrees off. The spirit of the religion is obviously to pay, and it's to do with unity.
Okay. But hang on. Yes, you are absolutely 100% correct. I'm not, but the thing is, I'm not talking about the mosque. I'm not talking about the religious aspect. I'm talking about the claim.
Yes.
I'm talking about people claiming that the mosque should point towards Mecca, and that is simply not true. It's the claim, not the rest. Okay.
And what I'm saying is that there's been a dispute, like Rob said, it's always been disputed how much, but the theory on Petra is very, very weak. It's very weak indeed.
I agree. I personally don't subscribe to Petra being what it is made out to be, what Jay Smith says. I don't agree with that, no.
Great. And I think, going back to what was being said earlier, I've got no problem with believing that mosques, churches, they were built upon previous kind of places of worship. So, for example, Muslims borrowed hugely from the Byzantines, the whole dome structure, the minarets. Absolutely, that came from the Byzantines. The Byzantines built upon ancient pagan sort of temples and rituals. That's how religion kind of works. From my understanding, the empires come, they built on previous things. Where I'm, as a Muslim, I'm absolutely open to admitting that, some of the things that we've got come from culture, and they come from other than what would be seen as perhaps normative Islam. But Islam is not culturally predatory, although there are certain versions of Islam that are like that, who push this Arab Islam. And I'm happy to discuss that if you want to discuss that with Abu.
Yeah, but not now.
Yeah, that's fine. We can discuss that another time. But I mean, my basic point was that a lot of previous shows I've watched about slavery, about punishment, it's very the character of Islam that is being presented. And one of the reasons I've joined this discussion is because the Wahhabi version of Islam, the so-called Salafi version of Islam, is being presented as a normative Islam, and that's absolutely false. The Wahhabi version only came maybe 200, 300 years ago. It's a very recent, postmodern version of Islam that.
Now you're saying many things there. Wait a minute. I have to stop you when you say postmodern. The postmodernism was a school. For the first, this idea of Wahhabism, first, it's just a term used by those who are against that school of thought. And I would argue the so-called school of Wahhabism dates back at least to Ahmed ibn Hanbal. In fact, we talked about this thing about that during the main period of the Andalusian paradise, they were very hardcore Maliki. So they kind of you were Shia or you were Mu'tazili, they killed them, and if you were Shafi'i, they deported you. So, and Shafi'i was a student of Imam Malik, if you remember this correctly.
And then he actually went against. And I think here's the difference, because I come from the Hanafi school of thought. Imam Abu Hanifa was Persian. He wasn't an Arab. And the Hanafi school is probably the biggest school of Sunni Islam throughout the history of Islam. If you look at world maps, we're definitely up there with the biggest school. Imam Malik, like Abu rightly said, was an Arab. And then Imam Shafi was also an Arab, a student of Imam Malik who dissented and created his own school. And then Imam Ahmed bin Hanbal was another Arab who followed Imam Shafi initially, but then he went into Hadith, and and he formed his own school. Now, originally Hanbalis weren't considered part of Al-Sunnah wal Jama'ah. They weren't considered Sunnis. This is something a later development in medieval period, and I think this.
Okay. That's I want to dispute that what you said, that he wasn't considered.
No, Abu, let's okay. I think
No,
we need
because
several. We need several episodes of this. First of all, let's do the Andalus story today. The next
One thing we can.
The next time we'll ask the question: what is Islam? What is a Muslim? Because those are the things where this discussion fits in, I think.
I have a suggestion.
I think that's sensible. I think we definitely, because one of the things about the Gin and Tonic show that we need to do is make sure we don't caricature Islam as if Islam is one thing. And
yes,
I think that's only fair that know that within the history of Islam there's pluralistic thoughts, pluralistic debates. There was interfighting regularly within it. I agree. We'll do that with another show.
I think we need some introduction, because most people don't know that Malik is Shafi's, Hanbali, that any of these exist. They don't know where to place Wahhabism or Salafism or Taliban or whatever. So I think we need a little bit of an introduction here, because the last time we did this was maybe like 4 or 5 years ago, and I don't think many people still remember that.
Look, I have a suggestion. From the next show on, I'm gonna go through. The first guy I start with is your guy, Mr. Abu Hanifa, and his fiqh. Okay, we talk a little bit about his fiqh. The guy after that, because I'm taking them in. These guys were born in a very similar period, so it's not like hundreds years apart. But I start with Abu Hanifa. Then the show after that, I talk about Malik. The show after that, I talk about Shafi'i. And the show after that, I talk about Ahmed ibn Hanbal. And then after that, we can continue with some Sheikh and history and go through it. Okay?
I think I would prefer, and if I may make a suggestion, Rob is off next week. I would prefer rather perhaps let's have maybe a 20-minute or 30-minute discussion on each, because I think the whole show would be too long and it would bore the audience.
I agree.
No, I'm not going to go the whole show, but just have a short presentation about the guy.
But then you come very much from a Wahhabi kind of loony.
No, I don't come from anything at all. I'm a non-believer.
No. You come.
I come from.
You said you were educated by a guy called Shaykh al-Islam in Hadith Albani, who was an Albanian watchmaker. I mean, I'm sorry, people don't take Albani seriously, nor Bin Baz or the media.
No, people take Albani seriously. Look at Sunnah.com. What do they?
Whoa. Come on,
you see I'm sorry.
One at a time, guys.
Yeah.
No, I want to say this now, because you're saying a lot of things and you're using it in a very civilized, polite way, and that's fine. But many times you say things that are factually incorrect.
Like?
And I'm going to call you out of that.
Yeah, please.
To say that Sheikh Albani is not accepted, that's BS. Yes.
He's not.
People that are against him going to say, oh, he was self-taught, he was blah, blah, blah. But look at guys, things like Sunnah.com. Who do they refer to when they talk about Sunan Abu Dawood? They say Sheikh Albani says this is a Sahih. Like to say that he is that no one take him seriously. Why did the University of Medina employ him? Why do the old guys say that he's the greatest muhaddith of our time?
Because he was employed by them. The Wahhabis have made their own sort of scholars. They've promoted that through over $100 billion of petrol funding across the world, and we're living in a time of mass Muslim ignorance. As a result, coupled with those two factors, people who are really not qualified, who grow beards, who speak a bit of Arabic, unfortunately, many people believe they are scholars. Only the scholars who can challenge them will say so. Early Islam, they said that the Wahhabis weren't even Sunni. They weren't even recognized as Sunni when they first appeared. But again, we can debate that. So.
Yeah, we can. This is going to be a continuing debate.
I think it'll be interesting.
I think your basic premises are false when you're saying that. For this, as I said, the word Wahhabi is not used by Wahhabism, and that kind of school. What I wanted to come back to, many of the things that you consider to be Wahhabism, even guys like Abu Hanifa follow that, and especially guys like Imam Malik, they are saying the exact same thing.
You'd have to give me examples of
this. Going to be like when you're talking about like fiqh al-jihad, when you talk about all these things that you say that but the earliest Muslim, they didn't interpret jihad as a spiritual.
No. That's not solely what I said. I said that the war aspect was certainly there, but jihad didn't just mean war. It did mean the spiritual. It did mean about chivalry. There was a spirit that went with jihad. It wasn't there for madmen, but what I would say was appropriated by the Umayyads, was appropriated by the Abbasids, who knew it was a great political tool, just like the Crusades, holy war. Religion does that. Some people use that. Empires use it. That was my point.
Okay, fine. I agree. There is a chivalry. There is a conduct to that it all. But I think that this whole narrative of this is the Wahhabis and they suddenly appeared and this is a late thing. I mean, this is factually false.
Okay,
Go back. Okay.
You both got different views, and I don't think we'd settle it now. If I was standing talking to both of you in Speaker's Corner, I'd obviously ask you the pertinent question, produce your evidence. Because somebody like me and other people out there, we can judge. What I'm cautious of is the two of you having a conversation very deeply that the rest of us tune out to. So if you are having a conversation about how scholarly is one, scholar versus the other, that may be a separate private conversation you want to have rather than here, because the rest of us will tune out. It's like two historians arguing over the historicity of Jesus. They'll go into very deep things the rest of us don't know either. So I want to be cautious of that.
Okay, but we see that as a long-term project. We go through it.
I would say what I would like, Rob, is I think this is a central question, because I think much of the shows are a presentation by Abu, who quotes scholars who most Sunnis probably wouldn't find acceptable. I think if you maybe could share a discussion between us, maybe for 15, like I said, a whole show, no, but maybe 15 minutes on a particular topic, I'll make the case why Wahhabis are not Sunni. I already started on my channel. You can have a look at that. But you can see what I say, and then he can rebut me if he feels that, and then we can move on to a topic like and discuss that. And I can tell you from my perspective, and he can tell you from his perspective. I appreciate he's not Muslim side, but
he was, so he's got a view on it. So Saracen, post the link to your channel into this chat and into the main chat, so the chat where the viewers are watching, so that people can view your channel and so that Abu can have a look at it as well. I'm happy to do something. I don't think 15 minutes will be long enough, just for the way that we normally have discussions. So we could do a show, or the first part of the show, whatever that looks like, could be the two of you. So Wahhabism, for example, would be a good one. Where we can listen in. So Abu's got a view on Wahhabism that is relatively recent, it's relatively, it's gone back over a fair amount of time. You think it's relatively recent. So now we need to point to sources that we can go and look up, because obviously there's a difference of opinion. So and it may not be solved, but at least we can then look up those sources between the two of you and go, okay, for me as not knowing, what would be most reasonable to me. And I will try not to be, too much on Abu's side. Obviously, we've all got personal bias, but if I can read something, if I'm still undecided, I'm undecided. But if you present something that says X, Y, and Z, and Abu presents something, I can read the two of them and make a decision. And so it's really about getting to truth, which is kind of going back to what Stop said. Which is, there are facts in the world to be known. Now, it may be that we'll never know for sure about, this, but it may be that there is a reasonable position to take on this. And so with those sort of things, I think, in principle, there is truth to be known. Whether we'll always know it is another story. But these are what the debate's about. Can we move slightly towards truth? If not reaching it, certainly in that direction. This is not about Abu beating you or you beating him. That I'm not interested in. If that's what some guys want to do, that's playground stuff, and I don't want to be involved in that. So, and it's the same as in Speaker's Corner.
I'm with you, and I don't go there. And like I said, I'm not Muslims all good, non-Muslims all bad. I'm very much, if something's fair, it's fair. I mean, I am passionate about this because I feel that Islam has been hijacked by the Wahhabis, and I'll make my presentation, and obviously Abu, I respect, and he can make his presentation like you said. We let the viewers decide.
Typically what works best with that is each of you make a presentation, and then you have a conversation between the two of you, which I can time, for example, and jump in if, for example, you're talking over each other or whatever the case is. Because when I watch debates, I like to hear what each person's position is, and then I like to hear them have the conversation without me jumping in. Those are the best. As soon as the moderator gets involved too much, I'm like, shut the hell up, moderator. Let the two of them have a go, unless, of course, it gets heated or, it's too much one way or the other. So if Abu's open for that,
I don't want to get it heated, and I love to have this debate, and I must say I'm very glad that Saracen is here, because I don't know for how many shows or years we want to have Muslims here. So I'm very glad that you are here, because now we can get this out of the system.
Yeah, you've got to say that.
In order to get an understanding of this, you can't just suddenly start with Ibn Taymiyyah, or even worse, you can't start with Stop Spamming Says Mr. Wahhabi. You have to go back to the earliest, and I think we don't have to go back to like the first caliphs. We can start with Abu Hanifa, and then we jump from Abu Hanifa to Malik, from Malik to Shafi, and so on. And then we go through history, because otherwise you're not going to get a true understanding. So my suggestion is we start with Abu Hanifa next week.
Can I ask Saracen a question?
Sure.
As a Pakistani, you've mentioned that there's different schools of Islam.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about Pakistan asking Facebook to look at blasphemy and attack it? Would you, with your views on Islam, be considered blasphemous within Islam?
No, I don't think my views would be blasphemous. I think blasphemy laws, I think Pakistan has made blasphemy law a joke, to be honest with you. It goes against the spirit.
Because you're not a Salafist, but Pakistan tends towards a Salafist sort of the faith, doesn't it?
Very, very much. And if you look at the history of how it got to that,
no, I haven't got that far in my studies of history.
What I would say is that a lot of the Pakistani laws, it was more tolerant when it was first formed. It recognized minority rights, recognized Christian rights. The white in the Pakistani flag is supposed to represent minorities. I think how it treats minorities is atrocious, and I think that is to do with a gentleman called Maududi. Now, Maududi was another self-taught scholar. He followed the Deobandi school, which is a mixture of Hanafi and Wahhabism. I know Abu will probably have something to say about that, but he was self-taught. He was Islamic supremacist. He influenced Sayyid Qutb. He believed that Islam should dominate the world, and he believed that you should do it via politics. So he set up Jamaat Islamiyah. Now, there's many branches of Jamaat Islamiyah across the world, but what they did is they got into positions of power. They went into and they influenced Sharia law within Pakistan. So under Zia's reforms, when General Zia came into power, it influenced him greatly. Minority rights were cut. For example, in Pakistan, they used to read about Hinduism. They used to read about the Bhagavad Gita. That was all banned. This very hardcore Islamization came in within Islam. That this is when we see the blasphemy laws. The blasphemy laws, you can't, they're a joke. To be honest with you, they're an absolute joke. I'm very passionate about this because and they discriminate against minorities.
Well, they seem to discriminate against Muslims because when you hear them talk on the BBC, for example, they say if there's 1.6 billion Muslims, there's 1.6 billion views on what is Islam. Now, it seems to me if there's that sort of divergence of opinion of what Islam actually is, you're going to find a group of them are going to accuse another group of being blasphemous.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, JP, that's nothing new. That's been there since the onset of Islam. And that's happened throughout even the four madhabs, the four Sunni madhabs. They've accused each other. It's not something new. How many of them have actually acted upon it is a different matter. You know, when you're dealing with people, you're dealing with power. You're dealing with power structures. You're dealing with people who want to maintain their positions. You know, and this is the thing with a lot of organized religion. I am going to put something in regards to blasphemy in the link that I think you guys will find useful. I have my phone, so I'm a bit of a novice, so do bear with me with all of this.
Well, we're all noobs on the net.
That's fine, Saracen, no problem. I think one of the overarching things is people look at Islam and just in general, and I don't look at Muslims because it is easy and you've articulated that here as well to go, hey, everybody views it differently in some sense. And so focusing on a particular person isn't useful, I don't think. But however, there is an overriding ideology that Muslims subscribe to in some form or another. And my observation is that whenever we have a Muslim majority country or Muslim run country, they tend to speak for the country. Now, it could be that a number of Muslims disagree with that. That's unfortunate. We don't hear from them. And even if we could hear from them, in what way do they represent other Muslims? So if we use the UK, for example, the government doesn't represent me in all my views, but I have to fall under the UK. And when people point fingers at the UK government, I'm going, okay, that's the government that I'm under. Would I do some different things? Sure. But what I do notice is, in general, those countries have got fairly strict laws in various things, which again we can talk about. Now, you might disagree with that. The challenge for Western people like myself is we look at what's happening in those countries. We look at the countries where, let's call it Muslims that you would probably disagree with, are coming into, and they're doing things very differently to us here. And now you may well honestly say, hey, do you know what? They are not being Muslim. They're using that label and they're coming in here doing that. So in some way they're influenced. And then you also have the books, the Qur'an, Hadith, Surah, etc., that people are taking some of this from. And I could improve the Quran in one single sentence, which goes back to Jainism. You've probably heard me say it before. And so that's kind of the way I look at it. So we can look at different people, but I think there's overriding things. And I suspect that if Islam became or Muslims became the dominant, group of people in the UK, and they may well do in France, and they voted somebody in, we wouldn't have the Western civilization as we do now.
No, and I fully accept that. To be honest with you, I myself, I'm a Muslim, and this may even be blasphemous, but I don't want Muslims to war. I think the laws and the way that this country is run, I think personally we live in the greatest country in the world. That's my personal opinion. I love living in Britain, and if I wanted to be really pedantic, I could talk about humanism and how some of these laws and even the judicial system here was influenced by Muslims, Roger, and etc. from Sicily. But that aside, I don't think Muslims. I don't see a critical mass that really embodied the spirit of early Islam. I think we're in a confused state. I think part of that is due to post-colonial times. I think it's due to social class. I think it's due to education, poverty, a number of other things. I can't deny that there are verses in the Qur'an and the Hadith are and this is where, going back to Wahhabism, traditionally the Quran and the Sunnah, such as the Hadith and what's attributed to the Prophet, peace be upon him, was the domain of jurists. It was the domain of the scholars, like highly qualified people. You had to know pre-Islamic poetry, Jahili poetry, to understand the Quran. You had to know hyperbole of the Prophet. You had to know logic, grammar. Unfortunately, we've taken a very constant approach to the Quran and the Hadith, where anyone can just pick up and say, "Oh, look, it says there, kill the non-believers. Oh, kill the Jews, etc." And this is exactly the problem. You know, when you get people who just pick things up and they're not educated and they haven't mastered these sciences, and with these sciences you had what we call an ijaza system. That's like a license to teach, and it was quite sparing. It was given. You know, you had to sit with a teacher for several years before you got permission to teach in a certain subject. Nowadays, you can go to Medina University, graduate in 3 years, grow a beard, go on YouTube, and suddenly you become a scholar. You know,
wait a minute, graduate in 3 years?
3, maybe 4 years, some of the things. But the point being is that you've got people out there that are claiming to be scholars, and you've got people speaking on behalf of Islam. Speaker's Corner, I think, is an excellent example. You know, people like this week, I challenged Ali Dawah. I said to him, "Look, we're speaking for Islam. You know, you can see on YouTube, and you've got no credentials. You converted about 2-3 years ago. You know, and it's all just hot air. You're not trying to listen to the other person. You know, you're speaking on behalf of Islam. And to be honest, this is one of the reasons I was slightly reluctant to come on live, because I believe that whatever I say, I'm a representative of Islam. You know, when I speak, I'm far from perfect. You know, I'm not as studied as I'd like to be. But then when you've got other people speaking that are probably less qualified or equally less, on my level, you know, I have to speak out because I'm hearing everything every week. People speaking this, that, the other, anything that they want. The Quran says this, Hadith says this. There's very strict criteria.
No, but Saracen, you are wrong. You are not a representative of Islam or Muslims or nothing. You are only a representative of you. That is it. Whatever you say will be scrutinized, will be checked, will be double-checked, and will be verified. So it's not that if you say something, you are now a representative and that is it, and you are taken at face value. No, you will just say something, and we will look at this, and you know, we will check whatever it is that you will say, and that is it.
That's fine, and I'm glad you. I mean, you're an intelligent person, and I'm glad you can hear. There's other people who, the moment you go on TV, there's people and there's powers out there, and you know, we're in a pretty open community here. We can speak freely. There's other people who have agendas that will cut and paste pieces of video. Oh, Muslim says this, or you know, look what Islam says about this. You know, and I don't want to be misrepresent the Quran. I certainly don't want to misrepresent Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. But that said, I'm here obviously to give you a Sunni sort of side. Where I don't know, I will say I don't know.
Well, I appreciate your honesty, and I appreciate the fact that you're going to come on and, as Stops has quite rightly pointed out, you are going to present your interpretation, because somebody else in the Sunni faith could come on here and challenge you on probably a number of those points, and we could listen intently, and you guys could have, you know, and Abu could potentially do that from his view, but you may not accept that, but you could have somebody else. So you're representing your interpretation, which is fine. I don't take Ali Dawah as, you know, other than, so when Ali's on there and we're speaking, I'm looking at Ali and I'm going, okay, this is your understanding. I don't generalize that to people like yourself, who's more intelligent, who's more well-read, etc. So when I'm speaking to somebody, I'm listening to what that person has to say, and I'm judging what they say on them particular. I'm not talking about other people. But we have got what seems to me to be objective things that we can go back to, which is the Quran, you know, the Hadiths, etc. And you said something interesting earlier on, where you said, you know, we can look into this, and people are taking it in whichever way, you know, they want to take it, and you sort of don't agree with that. But it seems like from an outside perspective, we are looking in at this, or I am, obviously the other guys, have got their views. I'm looking in at this and going, okay, so there's disagreement here. But if I read the Quran, and you were saying, oh, you need to be a scholar. Now, this flies in the face of some claims which you could reject, or you could say that that's not true. I have Muslims telling me and other people all the time that this book was dictated to Muhammad and was designed for the entire world. So if I pick up this book and I read an English translation, which I think most Muslims would agree is a reasonable translation, there may be a few words where you want to hanker on certain things. I should be able to read that book and get an understanding. I don't need to go and listen to scholars, etc. If I read the Bible, it's the same thing. If the message is not clear enough for me, then there's a problem with the book. And if the claim is that I need to learn Arabic, well, then that throws out the claim that the book is for everybody, because that's for a minority of people who can't even probably read classical Arabic very well. So now you're looking at 10% of the population on the planet. So we need to be clear on what the actual claim is. Is the book for everybody? If so, how does that work?
What I would say, my claim would be this. I would say, yes, you can read the Quran, but it's very, very difficult for Western people to understand the Quran. It's not a linear book. It's there's verses in there that it's very hard to see even how they relate to each other. With the Quran, you have to know the life of the Prophet, peace be upon him. Now,
sure, I understand.
I think, and I would say that's probably a better approach to it. I would say rather than read the Quran, because they say that the Prophet, peace be upon him, his life was, his character was the Quran. So I would suggest that, and I've seen like lots of Muslims, hey, read the Quran, blah, blah, blah. I know people who read the Quran, it puts them off Islam. I know several people. If I was a non-Muslim and I read the Quran and I read it verbatim, I read it literally, I would probably never become Muslim, and I can fully understand why people, but then we have to look at the other source. Now, for me as a non-Arab, I would look at the life of the Prophet, peace be upon him. There's several sources, and I've pretty much got almost every single seerah collection out there. Ibn Ishaq, I've got Karen Armstrong, I've got Montgomery Watts. I've got all of them. For and against, I've even got Robert
you don't have Ibn Ishaq. You do not have Ibn Ishaq.
Wait, stops. Okay.
I've got the Oxford, the Life of Muhammad, the Guru translation. But what I'm saying, I've got Martin Ling. I've read the pro sources and I've read the negative sources. I think an easier way to understand Islam is, number one, this is my premise is this, that the Prophet peace be upon him, is described in the Quran, this is undisputed, as a mercy to all the world. Rahmatil lil alameen. That's my premise. And then there's hadith. The hadith, again, I think we will need a show on that. There are so many fabricated hadith. Even in Bukhari, which is supposed to be the most authentic book according to Al-Sunnah wal Jama'ah, which wasn't agreed upon, but again was agreed in the medieval time. There are hadith in there that are completely ludicrous.
Okay, but Saracen, you're jumping all over the show again. Do you know of a person who calls himself Dr. Bill Warner?
No.
Okay, he brought out a book which he calls the Abridged Quran, where he took the life of Muhammad, the way that it was. I mean, I don't believe that Muhammad existed, okay, but the way that it's described in the Sunnah, the way that it is described in the Sirah by Ibn Hisham, and he takes this as a template, and then on top of this life, he puts then the Quran and the Hadith, and he wrote an entire book using the life of Muhammad to show the development of the Quran, and then going into the various episodes of the stories and things like that, and puts it into historical context based on the template of the life of Muhammad. That is an interesting book to read if you ever want to.
What's it called?
It's called An Abridged Quran, and the author is called Dr. Bill Warner. It's not his real name; it's just a pen name that he uses to do this.
I've got that book as well. I've got that book. I want to let TJ sing in for a moment. So, TJ, please unmute yourself and welcome, and go ahead.
Yeah, I just had a quick question for Saracen. Actually, a couple questions, but because I'm from India and obviously you're from Pakistan, and I'm just curious to know most Pakistanis that you've come across, do they recognize their Hindu ancestry, or do they think they're Arabs and people from Central Asia? Just out of curiosity.
Okay. Yeah. So I would certainly recognize my Hindu ancestry. I came from a Rajput Hindu family, and I recognize that. I also recognize that we converted at a certain time.
And how about most of the people that you come across within your, like, do they recognize this fact, or do they consider themselves as Arabs or people from Central Asia? Would you say?
I would say that we're living in a time of mass Muslim illiteracy. I think a lot of Muslims don't even know some of the basics of their faith. I think history is just very far off for them, and I agree that, I think we have to recognize how Islam even spread in India. It wasn't just, people came and everyone converted. I think there was definitely a war aspect, how they entered into India. I think some Hindu supremacists also exaggerated, but I think there was certainly the Mayyids, when they went in there, it wasn't pleasant. I think we have to again recognize the context of the time as well. Hindus were fighting Hindus who were fighting Buddhists. Sacking temples was normal. Muslims did it, Hindus did it, Persians did it. So yeah.
Understood. And I guess coming to my second point, I think that when it comes to the local languages, because I know that within Pakistan that languages like Punjabi, Pashto, Balochi are banned, but yet people still speak it, but they consider it as kind of backward. Do you see that? Because I know that Punjabi is actually spoken language, but is it kind of looked down upon, and they consider Persian as kind of
I mean, I went to Saudi Arabia a few years ago, and I'm a Pakistani. And I wore shalwar kameez, which is traditional dress, and I was treated like a second-class citizen. But that goes back to what I believe is Wahhabism, which again we'll debate on another show. The Arabs look down upon me. They look down on black people. They look down on Pakistanis, the Indians, anyone that's not an Arab. They have this supremacist culture. But I know that's not the way of our Prophet ﷺ. So I believe that's a cultural thing. I believe they are backward people who got money very quickly, new money, but it doesn't actually give you great culture. To answer your question, Punjabi in some sectors of Pakistani society is looked down upon. I'm a Punjabi. I'm very proud, and I think I assert myself as a Punjabi, and I'm not afraid to speak my language. I don't think Urdu is any better. I think it's just a language of communication.
Understood. And I guess my last question, would be, what would it? I guess if you were to change your mind about Islam, do you feel that your loved ones would still accept you? Do you think that they would still, consider you as their own, or do you think that things would be drastically different?
I did an experiment when I launched my channel, and those of you who follow my channel might know this. What I did is I asked Muslims, I think 10 questions. So 10 of the most antagonistic questions about the Prophet Muhammad, about the Qur'an, about slavery, about all of these standard things that I had researched that people had problems with. Within 3 days, I got 19, no, not 10, 3 days, maybe 10 to 15 days, I got 19,000 hits. It was huge. I had Robert Spencer to, retweet my thing, David Wood. I had many people across the world. And when my parents found out, they actually sat me down. They thought I'd left Islam. So I had the whole, oh, it's okay, listen, we will still accept you as a son, but you need to still speak it. I go, listen, this is a social experiment. I wanted to know what happens when I do it.
What, just for asking a question?
Yeah. So there's a whole industry out there, and I think we have to recognize there is an anti-Islamic Muslim industry. I don't think Muslims make it any better, but there is a huge industry out there. And within those 19 days, I was invited to Facebook groups, closed groups. I was offered financial assistance to leave Islam. I was told that I could do public speaking. Many other things, I was invited to many other sort of great groups, as soon as I turned around and I said, look, my parents said, look, they were really upset that I did this video. So I agreed to take it down because they said, oh, family members are going to find out. They were, my family basically didn't even want to talk to me at one point. So I knew my dad's got a heart condition. I took my video down because I wanted to leave it on for 30 days and see how big it was going to get. And it probably would have become mini viral, already 19,000 hits. So I took my video down and I lost all my subscribers. I lost, you know, I was accused of taqiyya, you know, which is, I recently found out what that is. I didn't even know what that was. It was purely a social experiment. What I wanted to do is just show how easy it is, how people are so gullible to believe anything, you know. All I said was I'm questioning Islam and how famous I got. It's one of the easiest ways to become famous on YouTube and around the world these days. And I think it's incredibly sad, you know, just if you play up to people's ignorance, you play up to people's anxieties. And like I said, I don't think Muslims you know, I think Muslims have a part to play in this. I think, you know, if you do that, you can become incredibly big.
I just, I mean, but you would, you know, you would differentiate between, you know, criticism of Islam as like a doctrine and, you know, bigotry against, you know, actual Muslims as people, right? I mean, you would differentiate between the two, correct?
My well, perhaps I've grown up in England. I would like to think I'm fairly well educated. I've grown up in a very mixed community in London. I've grown up in North London. I've got people faith from all different. I hang around with people of faith, no faith. You know, my college that I went was a predominantly Jewish college. You know, I don't see, like I said at the start, I don't see Islam, yeah, good. Non-Muslims bad. I agree with just justice, you know. And I think it was you're Punjabi, right?
Yes.
I think Guru Nanak said, "Na koi Hindu, na koi Musliman." You know, you know, we are all just human beings, and I just see humans, right? I won't back Muslims if they're wrong, but equally, I do believe that we have, you know, I do believe there are many Muslims are. There is this Islamophobia industry out there, and I think we have to recognize that. I think there's people with agendas. I think there's people who seek to divide the community, on both parts, Muslims and non-Muslims, who seek to divide the community. And I think by having discussions like this on the Gin and Tonic show, we help to break down barriers. You know, I'm very proud to be British. You know, my grandfather fought for the British Army. He was awarded one of the highest honors for saving the battalion for an Indian soldier. You know, and I think Britain is changing. I think Britain has never been one thing, and you know, I enjoy listening to other opinions. I like to challenge myself. So, you know, what Rob says, I listen to his talks on in Speakers Corner, and I challenge myself. I research, and I think this is a community where, you know, if we can do that, it'll open up our minds.
Yeah, I think you're right. It will open minds, and the more you talk, though, the more you almost sound like a secular person. It's
I was just thinking the same thing. Yeah, exactly. I wonder what would happen if you were to talk to Saracen like half an hour. What would happen? Are you sure of the consequences of this?
Well, this is the thing. I come from a very rational school. This is the thing. The Hanafi school is a very, very rational school.
No, sorry, no, don't call it rational.
It is a rational school.
No, it's not. It's appealing.
Okay.
Not rational.
Well, we'll have that discussion when we talk about Imam Abu Hanifa. Basically, you know, Islam, like I said, is not one thing. And you know, your suggestion of what is Islam as a show, I think, is an excellent suggestion. You know, we have to have that discussion because I don't think. I mean, there's certain things in the Quran that are clear cut. You know, it says that in the Quran. There's other things that are unclear. They're called the muntashabihat. You know, that are unclear. What is essential Islam? That's
okay. Now we have the third program. What does the Quran say?
Yeah, I think that's
I think it is useful if we sort of start with something like what is Islam, or what is Islam from your point of view, because obviously we could bring 10 people on and they'd all give a slightly different view. Presumably, though,
12 opinions.
Yeah. but presumably there are certain things in common, like Christians. If Christians don't believe Jesus is the Son of God and was raised from the dead, then in what sense are they a Christian? And for you, there'd be certain foundational beliefs that you must believe, I suspect, in order to be Muslim. Now, we could debate certain surahs in the Qur'an, etc., etc., but you would believe that Muhammad got a message from Gabriel, that message was entirely verbally sent to him, and then that was recorded, and it's a perfect word, etc. So there's certain things that you would, I would suspect, as a Muslim would agree to.
I think
that's the conversation, because now we can have that conversation with you, because where it sounds to me sort of partially contradictory is saying, okay, let's be, let's have all of these things, you want to live here, etc., etc. But at the same time, the book is difficult to understand, so we need scholars. But then some people say the book is designed for all humankind. So you kind of said, no, well, it's more a message that Muhammad's giving. So presumably you wouldn't bring up science and that sort of stuff, and say, hey, the Quran suggests that that there's a big bang and all those sort of things. So what would be great is to hear your sort of views on that, almost as a topic that we can discuss. Because once we understand your views, now we can interrogate is not the right word, examine what you say, rather than us having a preconceived idea that you, for example, some kind of moderate that's trying to give cover, as some people say, to the extremists.
Yeah, no, I think, and I'm currently reading a book by Shabab Ahmed, who is a Harvard scholar, and the name of the book is "What is Islam?" and just to briefly suggest what he doesn't believe it's one thing. Like you said, there are certain parameters. As a Sunni, there are certain foundational beliefs, and that's called creed or dogma. I follow the Maturidi school of thought. Also, the other school of thought is the Ash'ari school of thought. Those are the creedal. That's what we are as Sunnis. That's what we believe. There's debate whether the Athari school of thought is Sunni. Some people added that on in the Middle Ages. I'm sure Abu will have something to say about that. But those are the two schools of thought that I follow. I follow the school of thought, the jurisprudent thought of Imam Abu Hanifa. And within the Hanafi school, there's many vast kind of opinions and all sorts of things, such as homosexuality, slavery, many of the things that you've discussed in previous shows.
Okay, but so you say you follow. You say that's what we believe. We believe what he says. Do you have an individual opinion, for example, what happened in Andalus? Just to bring it back to the topic.
I think to go back to, I think I said what I believe in Andalus at the start of the show. Is there anything else that you need?
Sorry, then I didn't hear that.
He was basically saying that the Muslims were invited in, and was a paradise comparative to the time it was. Obviously, it's not a beach paradise that we would think of today.
Okay.
It was somewhat of a paradise compared to, for example, what was happening prior. And I think there's some dispute on that.
The question would be: is that your personal opinion, or is that something that you believe because you follow?
No, I mean, I studied this to a basic degree. I would never say I'm an expert on this, but I did sit down with Amira Benson. I did a course with her on early Islam Spanish history. I've also studied basics of the Umayyads. So, and that's certainly the information that I ascertained. I could stand to be corrected, but I think when you're comparing when Muslims go in there, I don't, like I said earlier, I don't think it was for the whole 700-800 years, whatever have you, that it was perfect. No, far from it. But I think if we're going to compare it, it's only fair to compare it to other places in Europe and around the world. So we're comparing apples to apples and not apples to oranges.
I don't think we should compare it.
You don't think we should compare it?
No, I think it should stand on its own.
Okay.
Because I don't think that anything else being better or worse makes the other thing better or worse as well. So I think we should go and look at an instance of the Spanish conquest on its own. We can't say, well, because another nation invaded someone else, it makes it any better or worse. No, I think we should look at this as such and say, okay, what are the facts? What is it that we know about this thing, and not compare it to other things? And this is why I'm a little bit surprised that you would say, well, number one, you looked at history, and number two, you would say that this is a paradise.
I never, I don't think I've ever said it was a paradise. And I think perhaps you missed when I did speak about it. I said I don't agree with what the Umayyads did. I believe that they appropriated the term jihad. And there is a book that I'm reading at the moment called The End of the Jihad State. The great jihad state was the Umayyads. They made this doctrine to get Arab soldiers to go and claim booty, and they did, and they spread Islam like that. It wasn't, but what I also said, perhaps I don't know if you were present at the time, is that the official position of the Umayyads was not to convert people. They didn't want to convert people. They wanted people to remain in dimitude so they could claim poor tax.
So you do not claim that the conquest of Spain was a defensive war?
No, I don't. I think it was a territory thing. I think the Umayyads wanted to expand their empire. I think with the Umayyads also, you have to understand that they'd been chucked out of power by the Abbasids. You know, and this Abdul Rahman III, who went into Spain, you know, it was a refuge for him. The Abbasids controlled most of Iraq, Iran, that central, around the Middle East and Mecca, Medina. So there were two different empires. So there wasn't just one caliphate, there was two caliphates at the time.
Okay, but Muawiyah, who started the Umayyads, he was in Damascus. Yes. Do you consider him to be a Muslim?
I consider him to be a Muslim, yes.
Why?
I think, why do I consider Muawiyah to be a Muslim? I think within the Sunni school of thought, he was a companion. I think I am critical of Muawiyah on certain things, but I think if I'm a Muslim and I believe in Sunni Islam, then there's certain things that we don't say about certain companions because they were chosen by obviously Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You know, that's not to say he didn't make mistakes. He did. But I wasn't there. And I think the other thing about that period is history is incredibly skewed. There's lots of different groups. There's the Zubayrites, there's Alawites, there's obviously the Shia of Ali, there's Muawiyah and the Umayyads. History was written by lots of different people. So that's the thing about Muawiyah. Like I said, there's many things I question about him. But you know, who am I?
You can't say who am I.
I say that humbly in the sense that, you know, as a Sunni Muslim, you know, if he was the companion of the Prophet Muhammad, and I know some people have questioned him, it's not for me to. I suppose because I believe in Islam, I suppose what I'm saying, because I believe in Islam, I believe in Sunnism, I can't question Muawiyah. If I was a historian, perhaps I could. If I put my history out when I can, but you know, yeah.
So you believe that he was a scribe and the whole story?
I believe he was a scribe. I'm skeptical of him, but I prefer not to say anything further.
Okay.
I think one of the things, as I listen to both of you and stop speaking, is I can see to a degree where it's useful to compare what happened in Spain to other things happening at the time. I can see why people will want to do that. At the same time, I would echo stops in a view of, if we're going to look at this, we can examine that. And I think what seems to be more accurate would be, say, the Andalusian conquest rather than paradise, because that gives the impression that this was somehow better or not as bad as neighboring. So even if we were generous and we said that it was the same, which I think I'm very skeptical of just reading the book that I have or the little bit that I have, but assuming that was the case, I think the best we could say, if we were extremely charitable, is that they treated the people just as badly as previous rulers or people in or around the same place. But I don't think we can. Seems to me, as non-believers, I'm certainly I don't think we can call it an Andalusian paradise. I think we can call it an Andalusian conquest, and if you're able to accept that, I think that's okay. But to try and hold it to a paradise in some way that is better, that doesn't seem to stand up. Everybody was violent, let's just say, at that time. But they were at least as violent. And then, of course, the North Africans that came in, those two different tribes, they were even more violent and more subjugation, etc., etc. But I don't think there's any time where everybody lived like they do in the West in any sense.
No, but I would also say that much of the Renaissance that we have in the West came from that Andalusia, that Spanish Muslim kingdoms. We had literacy, very high rates within the Taif kingdom. Certainly, the University of Toledo was a wonderful place, which housed the most books in Europe, more than in Paris. Oxford University is said to have been influenced by university system within Spain. Much of Western education came from that. The philosophy of Ibn Rushd, who was a great Muslim philosopher, went into...
I think this part of the thing is because the Dario Fernandez, he talks about this in this book.
Yeah.
I mean, his point is that this whole what he calls a myth, that the Greek philosophy was preserved by the Muslims and then brought to Europe through the translations. And he also talk about Ibn so he meant that
I think.
Could I ask what he said?
No, but let me just finish this. So he say that if it hadn't been for the Muslim conquests, there wouldn't be any need of preserving anything. It's a bit like I say that I break into Richard Dawkins' house and I steal a manuscript from him, and then I preserve it and I translate it into Arabic, and then like the police come and takes the manuscript, and then they say, thanks to Abu, the Richard Dawkins manuscript was preserved. Yeah, but if I hadn't broken into his house and steal the manuscript, there wouldn't be any need of it.
I think that's a poor analogy, and I'll tell you why. Because at the time, the Greek teachings of Aristotle, Plato, Socrates, and all that, they were seen as heretical by the Byzantine Christians. They didn't really, there was no mass movement to translate them. But the Muslims didn't just translate them.
But they didn't need to translate them. They spoke Greece. They spoke Greece in Byzantium.
The Muslims did, but they didn't. It was seen as heretical. That's the point I'm making. There was no mass kind of movement to translate or make work or study their work. And I think this is where we have to give the Muslims, I think any serious historian, if you're being fair, you have to give
Dario goes through that.
You have to, because they didn't just study them. They built upon some of their ideas. Atomic theory. You look at Imam Baqillani. He was one of they said that he was part of the foundation. They took Hindu. When they went into Hindu India, they took some of the best teaching, numbers, numerals. But here's the thing: it wasn't just Muslims. That the whole translation movement, like you rightly said, Abu, there was Greeks. We forget that there were non-Muslims working. It was a mass movement of Jews, Muslims, and Christians working in the House of Wisdom, debating these things. Philosophy wasn't just the domain of Muslims. It's a human thing. But they did definitely have that spirit. They built on new ideas. Those ideas largely came from, so we had people like Al-Kindi who had a student, Al-Farabi, who had Ibn Sina, who had Ibn Rushd. The Muslims largely abandoned philosophy, and I think that's part of the tragedy that we have today, because they became far too scriptural. The naqal of Imam Abu Hanifa, what we call rationality, has been kind of put aside, and now we're just people. It says there in the Qur'an, it says there in the Hadith, we just follow.
The aql of Abu Hanifa was mostly qiyas based on
Qiyas is analogy, by the way.
Yeah, it's qiyas on what from the Sunnah. So he didn't have access to as many hadiths as later scholars. But anyway,
and the akal is only on the Quran. Come on, people. You need to read the Quran and understand the Quran. The akal there is only on the Quran, nothing else.
No, it's not true. That's not true.
Okay, then show me where it's not. Okay,
it's absolutely
we're going into a different discussion. What is it?
No, don't go into another discussion again. Like, it's I just feel that it becomes very fleeting and not backed up by.
Yeah, I think it's. I think I agree with all of it.
Let's go back to civilization, and I think the key point that I'm making was that I think it's grossly unfair to whitewash the Muslim kind of Muslim contribution towards history. And I wouldn't say
what contribution?
I think there was a huge Muslim contribution.
But name one, just one.
I've told you many things. I went through Toledo University that influenced much of the university education system here. Oxford University, the Ijaza system that I talked about earlier, where people had to study for a certain type of.
Where's the contribution? I haven't seen a single contribution. Okay. You said Oxford was influenced by Toledo. What the hell is that? That's nothing. Okay, where's the contribution?
Universities are not contributions. You don't think universities are contribution? No. You don't think higher education is contribution?
No.
You don't think when Muslims had street lights and they were
street lights.
Civilization.
Okay, let's go. No. Whoa. Street lights. Where did you get this from? Where's the street lights?
It's in the historical books. They had sophisticated.
It's fake.
How can you say it's fabricated?
Because it's fabricated. It's fake. It doesn't exist.
That's your opinion. The problem.
No, it's not an opinion. It's a historical fact. There were no streetlights.
There was lamps. There was street lights. No, when I said
it's not true.
Okay.
Show me.
What about water from the Pyrenees when I think it was Abdul Rahman.
This was invented 1,000 years earlier. Where's the contribution?
The Romans, the aqueducts.
Okay. So let me ask you. Let me drop.
No. You made a claim. Zarazan, you made a claim. Can you please come up with some sort of evidence for your claim?
I can think of one Islamic contribution to India, and that was to replace the caste system with Islam. Because I think the caste system is far more abhorrent than Islam was, being born forever into a particular.
It depends which version of Islam, but I think we're going into many different things here. I would caution you, Saracen, with this particular thing. As I listen to you, you're making very broad claims, which then obviously Stops and Abu are going into, and it's difficult for you then to back it up here. You know. And
I think I'm, to be honest with you, I just basically just tuned in. Like I said, I haven't got any books or anything like that. I'm doing it via my phone, but I'm certainly willing to back up my claims in future shows that the Muslims hugely contributed to human civilization. Absolutely, both via Baghdad through Spain, and I am absolutely sure I can back that up. I'm also sure I can back up my claims that much of the Renaissance came through Islam, critical thinking, many things.
It would be brilliant. Back it up, because there is not a single contribution. If you could back it up, brilliant. Then I stand corrected and I'm learning something.
Look, I think we should take a show just about that. Prepare yourself.
Yes.
And prepare yourself with sources.
So your claim is that the Muslims, there was not a single contribution that the Muslims made. Let me just be clear. There was not a single contribution that Muslims made that benefits human civilization. Is that clear? Am I clear?
No.
Am I correct?
No. My claim is there was not a single contribution in the form of an invention or discovery that was major, that was groundbreaking. They went and they furthered, like what Al-Khwarizmi did in his Algebra, for example. He furthered algebra. He did not invent, create, or in any shape or form anything with algebra. He just went a little bit further than the others. If you're looking at water pumps, they were furthered. They did not invent this. The magic elephant came from India. It was furthered by Muslims. People like Al-Khwarizmi, there is no evidence that he even was a Muslim. So there is nothing to show that Islam, there is nothing to show that any Muslim has ever, no, sorry, there's one exception in 1999. There was one Nobel Prize for an American guy who says he was a Muslim in chemistry. But other than that, there was no major invention or discovery made by any Muslim.
What about Klingsor's assertion that the Persian Muslims improved horoscopes?
Yeah, okay, true. And most of those were not even Muslims, they were just Persians. Yeah, exactly.
I think to be honest with you, I think this is going to be pretty easy.
You can show any single one.
No problem. Let's do this in a few weeks. Let's talk about Muslim contribution to civilization.
Yeah, brilliant.
I will make my claim, and you can obviously try to refute me. And I'll put you.
Okay, so happy for you guys to do that. I think what you need to be clear on when both of you start to have a conversation, because you obviously want to have it with Abu, you want to have it with Stops, and that's brilliant. That's what we're here for, is to have the different points of view. My suggestion for all the participants who want to debate you in the different topics, etc., is to be clear on what you mean in the beginning. So when you need to be clear and you need to agree with Stops in some way, what contribution means. Does it mean furthering something? Does it mean inventing something new that we could not do without today? You need to be clear, because I'll be listening and I'll be going, okay, Stops, hang on a second. You know, I'm quite happy to point out something, whoever it may be. But you need to be clear in the beginning, because if Stops' criteria is you've got to invent something completely new, and your criteria is as long as somebody started the wheel and they've made it into a Porsche wheel, that's a contribution to humanity. Now we've got conflicting views there. So you need to have a foundation that you agree on in order for us to see, has there been a contribution?
No, I agree. And I think what we should do is to get everyone involved, what we could do possibly in the future shows, we can see how it plans out, is we could have maybe like a 15 or 30 minute, wherever it is, opening statement, rebuttal, or both opening statements, and then we get everyone involved, and we can.
But what has a religion got to do with improvements in humanity? Surely the religion has to be about the religion. What claim is Islam good?
No. The claim is that there were street lights in Cordoba, for example.
Yeah, but that's got nothing to do with Islam.
Yeah, but no, they are saying this is how far advanced the Muslims were, that they actually had street lights in Cordoba, which is...
That's just how far the civilization had grown, but that's got nothing to do with the religion, because we know out in the 11th century, the 12th century.
It's the Christian physics. Oh, look at Newton, he was a Christian. Another guy you said before that.
One at a time. Hey, one at a time.
Nothing to do with Christianity. You'll find nothing about genetics in the Bible.
Yeah, GP has got a point there, Saracen. So what there is you could bring an argument to say that Muslims did X, Y, and Z. They brought up street lights or whatever the case may be, which is fine. It may or may not be the case. We can, but and GP's got a good point. How does that relate to the Quran? Because if you can match it and you say, hey, if they didn't have the Quran, they would not have been able to do these street lights, or you can some way link those two. Now you've got a point that we can look into. Otherwise, it's exactly like Christian physics. You know, with Newton, he wasn't looking at the Bible when he came up with, the amazing invention. So essentially he was a secularist when he developed those things. So to say it's a Muslim is fine, and it may, Stops and Abu could disagree with you, but
no, I accept that. I accept what you're saying.
So you'd have to go into the Quran and then go, okay, here's something the Quran said. Here's what they.
I wouldn't be able to do that.
Okay,
I'm going to be very, very. I'm going to be very clear. What I'm saying is to whitewash history and say Muslims did not make any invention, then there was no contribution, or perhaps they just built on. I think that's just a gross distortion of.
Yeah, but then we've got to agree on terms, like we said. So when you say contribution, does that mean they furthered something?
Exactly. Yeah, and I believe they did. I think they both invented and they furthered things. I think the fact that I also, like you just said, I think the fact that they happened to be Muslim, it was just incidental. But I think you have to recognize that there was a civilization, there was a spirit that went with that. Where I would relate it to Islam was there is a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that is reported to say, and I think it's a beautiful thing, knowledge is a lost pillar of Islam, and wherever one finds it, he's entitled to it. And I think it's very much with this spirit that Muslims went out, to search for knowledge, philosophy. And I think this goes back to something a bit earlier. Islam is not just a religion in the sense that we believe that there was 125,000 prophets. Every nation on earth was sent a prophet, and we believe there was, I think, 330 messengers. So it was a continuation of previous humanity, previous human messages, and it culminated in the message of Islam. So when I look at
this is going to be a long discussion. Immediately when we try to, we can postpone it. Like this becomes so fleeting, and it just continues, and then you bring up new things, and then you continue from that, and it just continues. I think we have to take this discussion. Prepare yourself, prepare all the sources, prepare your arguments, try to make it logical and easy to understand, and bring if you have it, like sources and evidence and so on. Then I think we can continue this discussion. Otherwise,
but let's have two questions. All I'm asking is the answer to two questions.
Sure.
Please show the source for streetlights in Cordoba, and answer the question why everything in the Quran that can be verified is wrong.
Sorry, what was your second question?
Bit of a loaded question.
Why is it that everything that can be verified in the Quran is wrong?
Don't play with that kind of stuff. Make it easy. Stop spamming. Otherwise.
Okay, show me something in the Quran that is true, that is right, that is correct, that is verifiable. Something, anything.
Yeah, that's fine.
That compares to reality.
Okay, I think we have to.
Are you an atheist? Do you believe in atheism, or do you believe?
There's no atheism.
Okay.
I don't believe that the claim that God exists is true.
Okay, so with Rob, I believe, Rob, I don't want to misrepresent you, but you're agnostic atheist, right?
Correct. So I'm agnostic on the knowledge claim. I'm an atheist. I'm a very convinced atheist on the positive claim that Muslims make. So in other words, I don't believe there's a God on a 6.9 out of a 7 scale on the Richard Dawkins scale. I can't say 100%, obviously, because that would then become knowledge. But there's many objections that I have, obviously.
And stop. What's your position, if I may ask, so I understand where you're coming from?
Well, it depends what you mean. What is an agnostic?
So an agnostic is there is a God.
Ask Saracen. Saracen, what is an agnostic?
No, I'm asking you what you believe. I'm not.
Nothing. I don't believe anything. What is an agnostic?
I don't know.
Okay, that's good. No, that's excellent. Because I also don't know, I must admit. I don't understand agnostic. I understand the scholarly definition. One is from an epistemological view, knowledge and belief. But that's bullshit, because in my eyes, either you believe there's a God or you don't. Okay, either there is a God or there isn't.
Yeah, but there stops. You've just said it there.
You are an agnostic. It doesn't mean you know that there's a God. So you're automatically somebody who does not believe a God exists. So for me, agnostic is totally useless. It's a waste of time.
I used to think the same, Stops, and then obviously once I understood the difference between knowledge and belief, if you throw out the knowledge claim and you're just talking about the belief that somebody is pointing to you, then you could just say you're an atheist. But a lot of people who don't understand the difference will then say to you, Stops. So the fact that you say that, there is no, you rejecting my claim, that means you say there's no God, and you will say no, that's not the case. Correct?
Okay, go one step further. If you do not know that there is a God, if you do not know that there is no God, what is the difference? There's no difference. You don't know either way. If you do not know that there is a God, you're automatically an atheist. If you do know that you're a God, you're lying.
No, not quite. You're close, but not quite. No. The difference is either there is a God or there isn't. That's the knowledge claim. And nobody in this room here, if they're really honest, can say that they know for sure. So everybody in this room is bringing a belief claim. But on the knowledge claim, we're all agnostic. If we are,
that's what I just said.
Totally honest.
Yeah. So agnostic is a waste of time, because it doesn't matter which way around. Nobody knows that there is a God, and nobody knows that there isn't a God. So agnostic is Totally.
No, but a Gnostic could say that. So somebody who's a Gnostic could say, I know there's a God. Now, we could
You can't.
seriously challenge
You can't
that.
know. You
Yeah,
can't
well,
know that.
some people say it. That's the only reason it's there.
Okay. But then it's a belief claim.
Well, no, they're making a knowledge claim.
No, they believe that they have a knowledge claim.
No, well, yes, but of course they are saying they know it. And the moment somebody
not-
says they know
Agnostic
it,
is totally useless.
Stop. I'll be your God. Is that fair? I'll be your God. Is that fair?
That's fair. You're my God.
Okay. All right.
Guys, this is all very interesting, but now
Okay, the answer to Saracen is no, I do not believe the claims that a God exists.
Sure.
I am the typical person who says, absolutely, totally, I reject the claim that there is knowledge that a God exists.
That's fine. That's fine. You've clarified that.
okay, guys.
But I
Abu
still want
wants
to
to
know
go.
where the street
Abu wants to go.
came from.
I think we've
I
done
could
this
sit and talk for half
almost
an hour long, but I think
3
Abu's tired.
hours. I'm getting tired.
How the Lord joined.
You guys ever heard of Maltheist?
It's been an interesting show. Would you all agree?
Yeah, it's been an interesting show. It's just that I think we have to. We shouldn't
I
make
think
it.
it's a start of something. I think it's
And-
a start of something. I think we've got lots of questions, so we'll do a show on Wahhabism. We'll do a show of what is Islam. We'll do a show on Muslim contribution. And I think
As I said, next show I'm gonna say something about Abu Hanifa, and I'm trying to take things chronological, because otherwise it's gonna be completely unstructured and people are not gonna get anything out of it.
Okay, but
Can I say one thing before you shut it down?
Okay.
Can anybody Google Jehovah's Witnesses Australia Royal Commission or United Kingdom Jehovah's Witness investigations on their spare time?
No, we don't have spare time for that. This is a show
should
about
we do
Islam. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just telling the people that are watching in the future.
Okay, why should we
okay.
do that?
No, don't go there.
you.
Jehovah's Witness, please. You can knock on my door. I'm not gonna open. Okay, I just want to say before I go to the hadith of the day.
Okay, I'll tell you what. Okay, just before you do that, Abu, I'm fine with you doing the hadith of the day and then closing off. If anybody wants to stay and quote an after show, I'll keep it running for a little while. So once you've done the hadith, we'll call that the end of the show, and we can always cut it off. We can always edit it.
No, but you
I
can
will
continue.
keep it going
so-
for the few people who want to, because it sounds like not everybody wants to leave now. So do the hadith. We'll call the end of the show, and then we'll go into what's typically called an after show.
Okay, fair enough. You can continue the show. So,
Yeah.
but just everybody
Okay, so
knows.
you finish off with the hadith now. We'll call that the end of the official show.
Yeah, okay.
Then I
just
should
want
go
to-
get a beer. Get it, great.
Okay, good. So before, I just want to say that Isaac Newton had an aqidah that was very similar to the Vandals' Arianism, and they had in turn a aqidah that was very similar to Islam's view on how Jesus was. So, and Newton spent huge part of his life studying Bible things. Anyway, this is because we're talking about Al-Andalus, and Al-Andalus was following the school of Imam Malik, and Imam Malik had his Muwatta, which is a hadith collection. So I thought it was appropriate to read a hadith from that. Yahya related to me from Malik, from Abu Zinad, from Al-A'raj, from Abu Huraira, that the Messenger of Allah, may Allah bless him and grant him peace, said, by he in whose hand myself is, I would like to fight in the way of Allah and be killed, and then be brought to life again so I could be killed, and then be brought to life again so I could be killed. Abu Huraira said 3 times, I testify to it by Allah. Okay.
Can you explain that?
Actually, isn't this kind of similar to what Socrates said? Didn't Socrates say
To
something
leave and
similar
come back and leave and come back, and this is
Yeah,
an
to be
increase
killed
in
and burned.
knowledge.
Or have I dreamt this up?
So reincarnation then?
No, but
I'm just saying. As a man of Indian background, that sounds like a little bit of reincarnation to me.
Guys, once Abu reads a hadith, let's call that the end of the show. Then we'll go into an after show so that we could, if I need to, then at least I can edit this video, because now we go into something else. So
okay.
Yeah.
I thank myself. I wish you a good night, and I wish you a good week. And,
okay, so hang on before you run off, Abu. You wanted to do something on one of these schools for. I'm not here next week, so you will need to run that and arrange that either with Saracen or whatever. I'll be back 2 weeks from now, so you can set up whatever you want for next week. Yeah,
I'll host it from the normal time.
Yeah,
and hopefully Stop Spamming will be here also. And
can I ask?
Actually, I think I will.
Can I ask the structure? Can I ask the structure of the show? How are you going to do the structure of the show?
I will just make a presentation of who Abu Hanifa was and a little bit about his fiqh, and then we can just talk.
No, but come on, Abu. No, don't go so much, please. 20 minutes per fiqh.
Yeah, I agree. I think you
20 minutes just.
No, but do the madhabs. Do all four and then explain the differences.
No, Victor, it takes too long time for one show. We have to take this from the beginning and slowly, because there's too much to understand.
Yeah, but you can't spend 3 months on this.
Yeah,
yes, we
can.
No,
I don't.
Because it takes too long time to go through to understand.
I think you can broadly speak, and then if you want to go into details, if you want to talk, if the question of the show is what is Sunnism, is that what you want to be for? Then I think you can just cover all four madhabs, and everyone should be involved.
I agree.
It takes too long time. If you're going to take it like
Abu,
that,
you can
then
do
it's going to be.
You can do intro. You can do 15 minutes on each. You can explain the differences between them.
Yes.
You can show that neither one of them has anything to do with Wahhabism and Salafism and Taliban and blah, blah, blah. And just show the differences between a school, between a fiqh, between the
I agree. I think they have a lot to do with the so-called Wahhabism. But the thing is, anyone want to understand this? If you... Then it's going to take some time. You're going to have to go through it, and you're going to have to go through the history to understand it. Otherwise, you won't understand it. So
I think if you want to do a show, what it's Sunnism, here's the danger, Abu. Sometimes I listen to your show, and I'm going to be respectful here. But sometimes the show, you do too many monologues, and you give long quotes of some of the scholars, and people switch off. What you want to do is get everyone involved. Maybe have a polite discussion, 5 minutes each, or how we've had it today. I've tried not to dominate the show. I've let other people speak, and I think we've all done quite well, and we've all had put our bits in, and it keeps the show flowing.
Yeah, I agree. I'm gonna keep it short, and we can go off on a tangent and start to talk about the four madhabs. But it's just that it takes to take everything in one kind of show. It's going to be completely unstructured. People aren't going to learn anything real, and in the end we will just wasted the time. It's better take it from the beginning, tell it how is the school of Abu Hanifa, then we learn who was Imam Malik, what's his school, and then we go through, and then after Imam Ahmad, it's not going to be finished by that. Then we're going to have to go through Ibn Taymiyyah and Ibn al-Qayyim, and then we will...
they're not schools of thought. They are people who the Wahhabis are their scholars. That's like me saying Imam Jassas, I can go for a scholar like him.
Are Ibn Taymiyyah not a school of thought? He is considered an imam by so many people.
I think, guys, we also need to remember who's the main participants. We've got viewers and we've got discussion guys. I can see the two of you could do this together for hours together, I think, and maybe even stops. The rest of us, we'd like a cursory, just a little bit of information. I don't want to. You can do it. But going very deep is not helpful for the viewers. Obviously, Abu, you're very knowledgeable on these things, which is brilliant. But I think for the show itself, we're going, who's viewing this? And do they want to have a 20 or 30-minute history on each person? I think that's probably overkill. We just want to understand it. But if you then want to go into it in discussions with Saracen, that's perfect. But having a long 4 shows, it's going to turn us off, because most people don't want to hear the long history. Even the Andalusian thing was quite long, and you were quite concise on that. That was quite deep. It's more like, let's do the cursory thing. If people then want information, we could do a show, but let's do...
Okay,
fine.
Yeah. I'm just afraid that then this stupid debate on Wahhabism going to continue forever. If someone...
It depends how attached you are to the Wahhabism. If this is like really close to your heart and you're going to be...
I'm attached to the truth. And certain things can, even when it comes to things that are religious, certain things can be factually true about it, even if I don't believe in it.
Yeah, but you don't need to bring 15 examples.
Exactly.
Okay, I do a short presentation of all the 4 schools, okay? I say something shortly about Abu Hanifa. I say something shortly about Imam Malik, Shafi'i, and Ahmed ibn Hanbal, okay?
5 minutes each would be perfect. Then we've each got a little bit of a cursory understanding. Then you can have that discussion deeper.
I think for fairness, then I would at least want maybe 10 minutes just to talk about Wahhabism, its roots. I wouldn't need.
Yeah, but Wahhabism, we can talk about that in a separate show.
I think so as well. Yes,
because otherwise
this has nothing to do with the madhabs.
If I'm allowed to be critical, I'm not critical in a like, don't take it personally or emotional. But when you're speaking, it's gets so fleeting and so not based on kind of any factual things that you can pin down. And discussions like that are useless because they're going to continue for thousands of years without any real progress.
Okay, so next week we'll do. Are you going to talk about the 4 schools? Is that what the show is going to be? Okay, so that's fine.
And at least, Saracen, you know what it's going to be about. So have a few ideas of your own, and after Abu's done his bit, you can always throw in a little bit there. I'll leave it with Abu and Stops to moderate and to run it, and then we'll go from there.
No, I'm going to keep quiet. No. I think Abu is excellent. No.
What I mean is to moderate.
Is much deeper than mine.
No, I know. But if Abu and Saracen want to have a conversation, then you can moderate it if need be. If they just want to go at it, that's also fine. Okay. I'm almost thinking, Saracen, if you're going to be a regular guest, I'm almost thinking that it may be at some point a stage of having a second show. Because for me, and if other people want to take over the show, I'll step back. For me, I don't want to go too deep into like each of these guys and their history and stuff. I think for most viewers, that's a little bit too deep and a bit boring. But it could be that you and Abu could have a great show where you could attract people who really want to know the history and have those deep debates. There could be almost like a separate sister show where the 2 of you are like the main hosts and you go at it. That could be valuable.
No, I agree, and we'd probably need a moderator, a fair moderator, because where we could make our presentations very much like a legal argument, where we make our presentation and we do the rebuttal.
Stop Spamming can be moderator if he, or maybe Ike or something.
Yeah. Okay, so we know what we're going to do for next week. Abu, thank you so much for your presentation. That was helpful with Andalusian. Thank you to everybody here. We're going to stay on for an after show now. We'll cut the video here, and we'll see you again next Friday.
Yeah. Peace.
Thank you.
Cheers, Abu. Great. So we've still got 3 people in here for 4 of us.